Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of Partick and Ross Council today, Wednesday, the 17th of September 2025. My name's Colin Stewart. I'm the convener of the committee. I'm joined by Bailey Alistair Bailey, who is the vice convener, by Ms Molly, who's the clerk to the committee, and by Lisa Simpson, our strategic lead for legal and governance services, who's the lead officer for the committee. Have we got any apologies or substitutions, clerk?
Thanks, convener. Yes, we have an apology from Councillor Forbes, with Councillor Ellingworth substituting. We have a few members joining us online this morning, so when I call out their name, can they please confirm they're present? Councillor Carr. Been told that he is away to join. Councillor Frampton.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Councillor Robertson.
Present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers, convener.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is any declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in items on the of business on the agenda before us today? I don't have the chat. Okay, I don't think there are any declarations of interest. Item 3 on the agenda is the minute of the meeting, the committee's meeting of the 4th of June 2025 for approval. Can we agree the minute of the last meeting? Agreed, thank you. And then item 5 on the agenda is the outstanding business statement. We've got a workshop, and that was to arrange a workshop on vacant and eyesore properties from our review of council support to community-led development projects, including regeneration of key buildings, and that has been penciled in. So can we agree to remove that item from the outstanding business statement? Okay, thank you. Now, members, with your indulgence or with your agreement, I would like to vary the order of business on the agenda today and take item 7, which is the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre report, before we hear from the arm's length external organisations. Is that okay? Yes? Okay. Thanks very much. So we'll move then to item 7 on the agenda, which is Blairgowrie Recreation Centre, and we are joined today by this report was requested. The leader of the council had asked for a report into the reasons behind the delay to the expected opening of the new Blairgowrie Recreation Centre. So we've got a report before us from Stephen Crawford, our strategic lead for property services, who's joining us. We're also joined by Mr. Paul Carl, who's the construction director of BAM, and by Gary Bushnell, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Hub, and by Robert Meiklejohn, Mr. Crawford's colleague in property services. So I'm going to pass over to Mr. Crawford, who I think has a couple of slides for us and is going to introduce the report.
Thank you. The purpose of this report, as described by the convener, was to give an overview of the construction phase of the new Blairgowrie Recreation Centre, there has been a 34-week delay on its completion, and to identify any learning from that. From the circumstances. Just to recap, the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre has been completed and is now operational at a budgeted cost of £36 million. The project has been built on the site of Blairgowrie High School, and it's been delivered through the Hub East Central Scotland framework with the Tier 1 contractor BAM Construction responsible for the physical delivery on site. The original contract programme was to achieve practical completion on the 16th of December 2024, with a projected opening then it would have been in the Q1 of this calendar year. We ultimately achieved the practical completion on the 11th of August 2025. This was primarily caused due to delay in the swimming pool area and that's the material reason for the delay, and hence this report focuses on the swimming pool and not the other areas. Ourselves, Perth and Kinross Council, and BAM and Hubco have a range of and all our construction projects have a standard process, quality monitoring process through that. PKSA Property, we closely monitor and manage the project design and then the delivery on site with clerk of works and specialist clerk of works as necessary, and delivery of this project has mirrored all our other construction projects. Given the nature of the report, I've got half a dozen slides here that maybe just like to talk through members, because it's a technical report, but maybe give some context into when we talk about the pool area, when we talk about a boom, it can get, and we can refer to that these slides in any questions. So second slide, please. This just gives a plan of the ground floor, and I think members can see there the ground floor got 2 large games halls, all the changing accommodation, and then the pool hall on the bottom left-hand corner is the area that's under consideration. I think there you can clearly see the actual pool, the 25-metre 6-lane pool, and when we talk in the report about a boom and a raised floor, it's that white area on the left-hand side is the movable floor. The rest of the blue area is actually the normal swimming area. Next slide, please. And again, this is just a further cut of the BIM model to show that. Next slide, please. And again, further reduced, it shows the pool which goes from 2 metres at the deep end to 1 metre at the shallow end. When we talk about water in the report, it talks about water seeping into a technical room. The technical room is on the side of the pool, below the pool level, and I think I've highlighted that on that slide in the light blue area. And that's the water that's currently, due to historic water overflows or water in the pool area. That's where the water is seeping into at the moment, and I talked about that in the report. And the next slide, please. And again, gives further detail with the slope where the technical room is, that we can make reference to it during any questioning. I think that concludes it. And these are some photographs of the completed pool. That's the empty pool, and what you can see there is the movable floor, the boom, in an up position. And the following slide then it shows on the left hand the movable floor at a full height, and again that movable floor moves up and down for children's lessons. Anything can vary between 0 level down to the full 2 metres. But that hence gives additional flexibility in the pool for LAL to operate swimming lessons and activities for all ages at all times, rather than having a separate swimming pool that historically has been done in larger facilities. Okay, thank you. I think what I'd like to do now is, the report focus on the reasons why we were delayed for 34 weeks, and maybe ask my colleague Paul from BAM to run through section 4 of the report, and then I will conclude after that on what we think are the lessons learned and explanations, and take questions from that. Paul?
Morning, everyone. So in terms of what we encountered at Blairgowrie, we were due to start commissioning the pool in November. The reason that is towards the end of it is due to the design, the method design and the products we're using, as opposed to a concrete pool where you would need to start commissioning that much earlier. So that proceeded as per programme. Unfortunately, during that process, there was an issue with the boom where one of the panels hadn't been tightened down sufficiently, and it tore the liner when it was being moved when we started the commissioning process. This resulted in us needing to empty the pool and repair the liner and start the whole process again, delaying it beyond the 16th of December as targeted. Over the Christmas period, there was an issue where one of the breakers tripped, which identified an issue with the level in the balance tanks, which is to the top end of the pool. And we obviously had to address that over sort of early January time. During the recommissioning of that, as highlighted in the report, there was a failure with one of the pipes. They have been sent away, and there is nothing to suggest. It's just unfortunate these things happen, unfortunately. To do that, we had to then dig down at the side of the pool because the pipes are encased in concrete effectively, and repair the pipe. We did that, and then started the recommissioning process. As you can imagine, that took a few weeks to do. We then started recommissioning the pool again. Now, whilst the level of ingress was far less than previous, there was still ingress. At which point, through discussions with Hub and Perth and Ross Council, we made the decision to empty the pool again. We brought over so I should have said at the start, whilst Barnray are the designer, Merthyr are the pool liner specialist, and the boom and the movable floor is by a Dutch company, Variopool, and Barnray bring all that together to form the system. So we had a conversation with the specialists. The decision was made that we would bring their European technical advisor across, and he would inspect the liner. We did that, and it's worth noting at that point as well that through our quality management systems, that their technical representative for the UK had been at Blairgowrie on numerous occasions throughout the install to verify, along with our site team and the various parties, that everything was going as per their guidance. So they also used a vacuum testing equipment to test the liner, and we've done a full test across the whole liner and found relatively minor penetrations, really, but nonetheless penetrations. It's also worth noting with the movable floor that there are 72 penetrations through the base of the pool that fixes, allows you to adjust the level of the movable floor, which is on steel wire rope and pulleys. When we looked at that with the specialist, they suggested that we enhance their standard detail, and I imagine if you were to go and look at their standard detail now, that's changed somewhat. There was marine sealant and everything put on that, and we then refilled the pool. The pool sat for a considerable period of time, and it all was positive, and then we started recommissioning. Unfortunately, during the recommissioning process, there was a further flood due to a component failure and a change that had been instigated. That has subsequently been resolved. The problem with that and the residual water that Stephen referred to is that if that pool drops 1 millimetre in level, you lose 320 litres of water. The pool dropped 40 millimetres due to that failure. That resulted in circa 12,500 litres of water, of which we estimate, and it can only be an estimate, that 80% of that would have went into the technical room, the plant room, and it would be disposed of through the systems that have been installed into the drainage system. About 20% of that, we believe, went into the liner. The liner itself is very similar to those who are familiar with a Sarna roof, where it is what it says, it's a liner, and if there's about 4 to 5 millimetres of water in and around that liner because the water has got underneath, that would equate to roughly the 2,500 litres that we were talking about. That is then encased. The liner is designed to retain water, so it's not going to allow it to evaporate. There's upstands all the way around the pool to support it, and it's seeping out ever so slowly. At that point, we were measuring it and estimating it was 12 litres a day, and that is why it's taken so long for it to dry out up until this point. On the back of that is highlighting the port. There was a few teething problems, is probably the best way we refer to them, where it's quite a complex design in terms of how all the plant equipment speak back and forth to one another and everything else to give you a high performing building. And it's something that we encounter on most projects, and we've worked through that as well at the tail end. But that kind of summarises really the issues that we've had with the pool and why it's taken the time it's taken to resolve. I'd say we've worked collaboratively with Hub and Perth and Kinross with a level of transparency throughout to let everybody understand what the issues have been and what we've had to do to address them.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, to conclude, Paul has described the issues that have happened during the latter part of the construction process. There have been equipment component failures and valves and pipework that we've never seen before. There has been a number of commissioning errors, and we apologise for that. And there have been some, unexplained issues which we've resolved when we've found them. Once as Paul has said, once all the remedial works have been completed, and once we've tested, multiple times the integrity of the lining of the pool, there has been this issue with residual water between the steel tank and the liner, which is taking time to seep out. I'd have to say, as the strategic lead, it's impossible to say with 100% confidence that is not a leak, but the water's still coming in coming through into the technical room at a rate we estimate of something like, it's a puddle every day, so it's 12 litres. It's 12 litres, so it's a very small amount given the millions of litres that are involved in a swimming pool. In order to protect the council's position with this respect, phase 2 has been delayed for a period of 6 months to make sure that this is a residual water as opposed to a leak. That delay in practical completion, the delay has meant that the rest of the building, ironically, is in a more advanced position. Over the last 8 months, we've dealt with any snags in the rest of the building, but we've still got the pool that we're working through. It's been commissioned, and we're looking at, there's been a number of snagging issues within that, even from operation. The critical path of the project was all the swimming pool. And I reported to committee in November we were on target. The pool, everything had been completed in accordance with the programme. But in November, and certainly late November, and then the commissioning error in December, that kicked the whole thing out. In conclusion, there's been multiple technical challenges during this final construction phase. We have done extensive as we did through the programme, testing, target repairs. We've worked very closely together with my teams, Hubco Project Management and BAM and the suppliers. We've resolved across the whole centre the majority of defects. And in terms of lessons learned, I have to say this, having as a lead of capital projects, it's really challenging to complete projects. In the arc of pulling all of these large projects together, we've been remarkably successful in historic projects. BAM delivered the Perth Museum for the opening last April. So it does, but there are sometimes sometimes you're as good as your weakest link on this in terms of lessons learned, given the pressures within the construction supply chain and the increasing complexity of builds, property services, and I think this is the question for us, myself. Maybe we need to manage our expectations of contract programs finishing on a certain day and the day after, or very soon after that, to be fully operational. We've got Blair Rec now operating, it's open, and I would say it's raised a number of issues because now the whole building gets tested. It's literally now that we get the school in, we get the community in, whilst you build projects, you complete them as per the specification. It's when ultimately the users get in and start testing the locks, start testing all of the things that would break in a normal house. And sometimes that it takes us 6 months, 12 months to work through a project to finish all these things tidily. And I think, so I do say it's about us as a council managing expectations on project completion and then getting the building fully operational. We do have contractual safeguards. We've got a 12 months defects liability period and a snagging list that we work through. Unfortunately, this has been a major one at Blairgowrie. There's a do not pass go. The pool, that was at the end of the critical path. There was no slippage that we could have absorbed that into. But as a council, consideration needs to be agreed. Project timescales, contingency measures need to be programmed in. And we need to maintain the robust quality assurance, testing, monitoring throughout the project. So happy to take questions on the report in front.
Okay, thank you. Members, have we got any questions? Councillor Welch.
Thank you, convener. Thank you for both the report and the detail into the timeline and some of the issues that have been had delivering what is now a hugely welcome additional resource to the east side of Perthshire. As you've outlined, BAM are a high quality installer. It must be incredibly disappointing for them that that this has happened, and also obviously for ourselves. My first question is, in terms of identifying the choice of the essentially movable floor, my understanding is there's a number of technical solutions and different approaches to deliver that. What was the process and why was the particular solution decided on for this particular pool? Thank you.
I think, thank you for your question, Councillor. Obviously the project through the design phase, there's multiple options for booms, movable floors. We've got one other movable floor in Perth. We chose a movable floor that's in the pool, as opposed to historically the one at Kinross it drops to 2.5 meters into the ground. A lot of that was about it's about simplicity. There, in retrospect, the one in Kinross has worked for 30 years, not without issue, but it worked. But we've got effectively come up with a solution that's in the building. There is a degree of saying, well, there's no thermal loss within that. Personally, I like the concept of it's open and you can actually see everything, as opposed to having a boom and a floor that drops into a 2 or 3 meter trench forever. That you don't actually know what's going on in there. But I think the approach of even a flexible liner, people are saying, well, why didn't we do concrete and tiles versus a flexible liner? Ironically, the flexible liner is actually shortens the whole contract period. Albeit here we've now extended that to 8 months, and I think there's lessons learned certainly in future pools to say, given our experience of flexible liners, do we want to do that again? But we have got flexible liners that work well at Bredalbin. In terms of BAM, certainly with the question in terms of not BAM, in terms of Hubco, it's a standard product that we've rolled out throughout the industry. But there's that question: do you do concrete and tiles, or do you do or do you do a steel with a flexible liner? Question, and those are options.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. During the report, liner seems to be involved an awful lot. Now, one is there a guarantee, a long life guarantee with this type of thing? The other thing is, I was involved in an industry that did a lot of liners, and it's, of course, it's a stupid comparison, but golf suits have got wonderful liners on them, but they've only got a certain lifespan. I would be worried about the lifespan of this liner, especially when, like liners and other ones, they only last slightly whole, and we've now got water, we've got water, and you can continually back to it. So I would be worried about the lifetime of this liner. Can you give us some reassurance? Thank you.
There are guarantees on the liner. I don't have this, but it's, you know, it's 10 years plus on the liner. What we've also got is in our discussions with Hub, whilst I've said that we're extending the 6-month period, the defects liability period effectively for phase 2, to make sure this phase 1 works. We've also got an extended guarantee with Hub and BAM for the pool area for 10 years. Given our degree of confidence in some of the issues that have arisen, the head of legal services and myself have agreed a position with Hub and BAM to give comfort that the pool has been built and is operating correctly for the next 10 years. So we've got additional guarantees within that. And just for the avoidance of doubt, all our planned maintenance programs are with approved contractors and everything to make sure that we do not inadvertently break the terms of the guarantees we've got in the materials.
One sec, you're quite right, and they said inadvertently. It's like someone, and again, it's talking about a comparison, which is a difficult comparison, but when somebody spends a huge amount of money in a golf suit, if someone comes along and puts a poppy in it, that's it ruined, because that minute hole is going to let the water in. So I'd be worried about it, the movement, but thank you anyway, right?
If I could maybe just add to that, I mean, we've had issues with the installation. The same installation contractor delivers a maintenance service. That same installation contractor will be doing the maintenance for this, to join the whole thing up, to make sure that we don't inadvertently bring a non-approved contractor in who does something that breaks all of those.
Councillor Shires.
Thank you, convener. My first point is to say it's an absolutely beautiful building, and everybody that's been in it has just been really, you know, gushing in feedback on it. So thank you very much to everyone that was involved in that, because it really is something we can be quite proud of. And I can only imagine, given the other successful projects that you've led on, the frustration regarding all of this. You've answered most of the questions that I had. The one bit in the report that kept coming through and there wasn't a reply to was about the 4.2.1. It refers to 3 pin-sized holes, the origin of which is unknown, and then it refers to minor unexplained penetrations of the liner. I wondered if you could clarify any understanding around what that was.
What I'll ask is my colleague Paul, given the site was BAM's at that time.
In terms of when we were doing our investigations, the sort of unexplained where there was minor rips, tears, whatever, or inconsistencies in welding, really, none of which would have, I don't believe, contributed to the delay. Really, it obviously they did in a short term, but in terms of the 34 weeks, I think there was it's more to do with the complexity of putting, as I said at the beginning, the boom, the movable floor and everything else, and that was the need to bring their European technical advisor across. So in terms of what caused them, I'm not quite sure whether it was installation error by an individual or if it's been minor damage, but at the time of the inspection they were found and repaired.
Just the fact it's in the report, it just struck me as, you know, was it, I don't know, is that the kind of thing we would, you said you investigated and looked into that. It just doesn't quite add up to me, that little bit. And I know there had been quite a lot of discussion locally about the site and things like that. So just, yeah.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I was too quick. There potentially could have been damage, but malicious. But I don't know that for sure, and it's very, very difficult to pinpoint exactly who or what done that. They were identified through the recommissioning process and repaired. I don't think there's any detriment to the pool at all, but disappointing that we had to deal with it nonetheless. But unfortunately, it can happen from time to time. But to actually say who or what did that, I couldn't answer that honestly.
It's kind of, yeah. So just given this report is about our learnings as a collective, you know, with people we work with for the future and things. So I suppose you would be obviously looking out for things like that for the future for any further sites.
Absolutely, yes. We do. It's a matter of course. You know, we've got our staff. We don't. Maybe some other businesses you might see or get the feeling that they hire people in specifically for a project and then they leave. Most of our staff are 20 years plus. Some people sometimes see that as a negative, see it as a positive. We know our people. Unfortunately, from time to time this does arise. We do try to, through our QA processes and everything else, we do try to eliminate that. Unfortunately, on this occasion, a couple of minor incidents where somebody had went at the back of us. So what we could do is apologise about that and rectify it, which I think we have done.
Thank you. Vice Convener.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report, and thank you for the candidness shown by all parties in this, because it's important that we explain these things to the public when things do go wrong. My question is actually about the combination of systems here. I think when we embarked on this project, we probably thought the main unique thing about it was the passive house element, but it seems then it's something else that's tripped us up. Is this combination of a flexible liner plus a movable boom somewhat novel, or has it been installed in other areas up and down the country with success, specifically the combination of a flexible liner plus something that moves next to it? Is that something tried and tested? Thank you.
Thank you, and it's a very good question. What we found, obviously, we've specified this from via Bar, Merthyr Pools, and Merthyr and Vario Pool. What we've found is the flexible liner and a boom is a novel, is not a usual UK installation. It is used throughout Europe, and hence when we were questioning, right, we've got these issues, how do we do that? We did bring it, or BAM brought in the European representatives who literally went through the installation seam by seam, line by line, to ensure with equipment that the UK team didn't have, to make sure it was done in accordance with the parent company details and challenges. But no, to answer your question on interrogation now, we found that the boom, the mixture of the boom and the flexible liner for the UK is relatively novel.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. This follows on, I think, from some of the previous questions, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. You mentioned complexity of build. We're not the first to build a swimming pool, and of course we've got ambitions to build another one. There seems to have been a litany of faults and issues with the apparatus and the building components used here. Is all of this delay down to poor luck, or have we used inferior products and design? Thank you.
We have not used inferior products. I think one of the issues was, I think as Paul indicated, in the pool surround, the pool pipework was fractured. Now that pipework was, is effectively installed. It has a concrete surround around it, for the next 30, 40 years, it wouldn't have expected. We ultimately found 2 months after, got the pool, in February, that was a fracture. We wondered, where is this leak coming from? BAM dug out where the leak was occurring and have sent, and again, there was a whole, that component was sent back to the manufacturers to say, what is wrong with this? Where, and it wasn't part of a faulty batch run or anything. The delay was ultimately caused to the project because this was right at the end of the project. It was absolutely part of the critical path, and it's been working through. I think there's definitely a degree of combination of bad luck in some of this stuff. Yes, it's novel. We've built a pool. It's not the first pool in the UK. The passive house part of the project actually, is a lot of the passive house issue is actually in the superstructure. That's gone really well, and that's been delivered, and all of that evidence for the passive, material passive house thing, those have all gone off to the Passive House Institute. So I'm very confident that that's all been built correctly. All the issues have been with the pool and the pool surround, and I think there's definitely, lessons to learn from BAM and Hub and ourselves to say, right, in choosing the next swimming pool, these were the things that we found here. How do we we can't ensure, but how do we endeavour to make sure these don't come up with the same thing? We've used a proprietary system from one of only a few specialists in Europe. They've recommended this. They've not said it comes with a degree of risk. With that, we've employed Variopool, who are one of only a few UK suppliers for that type of kit. We've got Merthyr Pools, who are a European supplier. We've got Bar and Ray, who are, I think, only one of 2 swimming pool suppliers in the UK. So everything, we've put the right team in place. We've had designers that have done leisure centres before. We've got BAM who've done leisure centres, and even through the Hub process, a number of in the Hub territory, we've got flexible liners up in Brecon and Forfar who are there, and they're operating fine, and have operated for a dozen years fine. So there's a range of things here that you go, right, this has happened, and I think my report is, unfortunately, hopefully it's transparent to say there's a range of things that I've added to unfortunately create a 34-week delay. If I was doing this again, there's a number of things you think, right, we need to approach this slightly differently, and maybe put, Paul has been very candid with himself to say, the specialists, we would maybe look at the installation was done absolutely in accordance, to answer Councillor Smith's, absolutely in accordance with the manufacturer's processes. We're questioning some of the manufacturer's processes in doing that. I think Paul suggested before the boom goes in, we'd actually do a whole big watertight test of the thing and then go the boom in afterwards, whereas their process was putting it all in, and it was only at the last moment when everything was right, let's put the water in. And that's that question that in retrospect you go, let's rethink some of this process, and certainly that's the learning that we will take from the next process, to say, we thought the challenge was the passive house, and we've got passive house, the passive house project at Blairgowrie. It's probably one of the most airtight buildings in Scotland. People didn't think it could hit these targets, and it's airtight because it's been built correctly. But all the issues today have actually been in the pool surround, not the airtightness. But you like every project, and you bring learning from it to the next project.
Stephen, thank you. That's the most comprehensive answer I've ever had. Thank you. Well done.
And a further question from Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Convener. Again, I welcome the report and the candid way in which it's been pulled together, and ultimately that's how exactly lessons learned feed through into subsequent arrangements and contractual procurement with with future projects. In terms of future projects, my question is, we're obviously committed PKC to delivering a new leisure centre at Thimble Row. and I guess the process has now started around the design and the process around procurement for that. In terms of the Blairgowrie pool experience, I understand, you know, we are where we are. I guess in the lessons learned, you don't explicitly say that the element of some of the design issues that you've had at Blairgowrie will be part of it, part of that. But can you say, you know, beyond the lessons learned that you identified in the section of the report, is this aspect of, for example, pool construction something that you will take forward in that? Thank you.
100%. It's the same team, my team who are receiving this building and dealing with these issues are currently writing up the client's requirements for the swimming at PH2O. So those questions, those options appraisals, when we build the pool, you know, and with what we've got is specified in the core brief as a movable floor, a small training pool, and I think an 8-lane 25 metre in the PH2O, and we'll look at that in light of lessons we've learned here, and we'll bring those through for the PH2O project.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions in the chat. Okay, thanks, Stephen. Are there any comments on the report? Does anybody want to make any general comments? Councillor Will.
Thank you, convener. You know, again, I just want to emphasise that you know, my impression of this, as Councillor Shire says, has been a hugely successful, hugely impressive building, which has unfortunately been overshadowed as a result of a delay in the formal sort of handover and opening of the building. You refer to in the report again some of the lessons learned, you know, and part of that may be around expectations and setting effectively you know, formal dates and giving yourself and your contractors maybe more wriggle room around that expectation. But certainly from my perspective and feedback from those who have been to the pool, it's a hugely impressive facility, and I thank both the properties team and the quality assurance within that, and also the contractor for delivering a real asset for Perthshire. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Shires.
Just echo the comments that Councillor Welsh made, but also to refer back to the period before the point of the delays, and to thank all the PKC staff who were really diligent in meeting with residents round about and dealing with any really individual issues that came up with neighbouring properties. That was really appreciated, and it's really unfortunate that there was the delay. The report is, I think, as Councillor Allen said, it's really clear and concise, and it's a clear sort of draws a line under this project for us as a community, and we just look forward to the demolition of the existing building, a decision about that tiled wall, don't forget the tiled wall, and the facility being well used by the whole of the East Perthshire community for many years to come. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And just to add my thanks on behalf of my constituents who use the facility, even though it's not right in the Strathmore ward, it is used by, as Councillor Welsh said, the wider Eastern Perthshire community, to our property services for the quality control on the build, and to BAM and Hub for their work on the construction. Can we therefore note the measures that were put in place to manage construction quality and quality control, and take assurance that the building is fit for purpose at practical completion? Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Mr. Carl and Mr. Bushnell for coming in and giving up your time. We had a pre-meet last week, so you gave up your time for that, and I think you were contributed to Stephen's writing of Stephen and Mr. Meiklejohn's writing of this report. So thank you very much for the time you've given up and for coming here today. And we'll now take a 2-minute break. Just don't anybody move from their seats, but just to let them leave. Thank you. Okay, thank you, members. We'll now move on to The next item on the agenda, item 5, which is the arm's length external organisations, from here on ALIOs. We are joined today by, from Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, Chris Glasgow, the Chief Executive Officer, by Dan Campbell, the Head of Commercial, and Steve Stewart, who's a member of the board. From Live Active Leisure, we have apologies, I think, from Paul Cromwell, the CEO. And we have Andrew Brown, their Head of Business Development, Gary Watson, their Head of Operational Services, Phil Coleman, who's their Service Manager for Physical Activity and Sport, and Dr. Danny Carey, who's the Vice Chair of the board. And we will have from Culture Perth and Kinross, again, apologies from Helen Smout, the CEO, but we have Kenny McWilliams, who's their Head of Operations and Sport Services, and a board member, James Findlay, who I think is joining us online. And we also have Karen Johnson, who's the manager for the within Culture Perth and Kinross, within, I'm getting my CPK and my PKC mixed up, within Perth and Kinross Council, for managing the relationships with the ALIOs. So we've got some slides from each of the ALIOs. First of all, it's Perth Theatre and Concert Hall. So Mr. Glasgow, do you want to introduce this?
Thank you, convener, and good morning, everyone. So I'm pleased today to tell you an initial report on 125 Live, which was our anniversary celebrations marking 125 years of Perth Theatre and 20 years of Perth Concert Hall. Can everybody see the slides? There we go. So I wanted to start by telling you really about the cultural foundation for the event, some of which was very public, but also other elements which were behind the scenes. So the project was essentially designed as a street party in 2 parts, which I'll tell you about when we get to the next slides. But one of the key reasons for the layout of the site that we chose and the number of stages that we had is it was a real opportunity to look at skills development across the organisation. So within our production and technical departments, we have 3 core disciplines, and that is stage, lighting and sound. So the reason we designed that was actually to allow each of the members of staff in those teams to really take ownership of the design and build of the site, and actually to look back at the end and say I was responsible for that, which with touring productions and in-house, they don't get the same opportunity. So it was a really key moment for skills and talent development within the organisation and to look at cross-team working in a very different way. That then moves us into our focus on the community, and I was really keen from the outset that we created an event that, yes, brought headline acts into the city, but most importantly profiled community organisations equally alongside those headline acts. And if I were to give an example of that before I talk specifically about key programming aspects, during the day we had lots of community organisations who work in our learning and engagement output, but also in the evening when we had the festival itself, we were really lucky with the musical theatre stage to work with Victoria Lee Rice and Perth UHI to give the graduating students of the musical theatre course the chance to be the ensemble and to work with a professional musical director, choreographer and West End trained singers. Similarly, another local band, Parley Amo, so they first performed in Perth Theatre in the Joan Knight Studio in my first year in the organisation, and they did their gig in the Joan Knight Studio, which is a 200-seater. They then went on to do the Gannicky, and now they're headline acts on our biggest event that we've ever delivered. So that was a really key part of the process for me, both at a very local level and then looking more widely, regionally and nationally. But then there was also the opportunity to look at acts who have roots in Perth, but have never actually had the opportunity to perform in their hometown. So it was really key with the event that we were also bringing things to the people of Perth and Kinross that they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to see. And one of the reasons for doing that, following Creative Scotland and our increased funding through the multi-year pot, is it's enabled us to really solidify our future direction as a producer. And that was a really key moment to be able to signify that to the wider cultural sector. If I could have the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the event ran in two formats. So during the day, we did a free daytime festival, which had a big focus on lots of community organisations that we work with, and a key focus on activities for children and families. I'll let you read each of the acts that we had involved, but there are just a few kind of key partnerships that I want to bring to your attention. So we're really lucky that St Johnstone Football Club have came on board as sponsors of Gig on a Truck, not just for this event, but actually for the next 3 years. So building on that partnership and also our close working with Culture Perth and Kinross, we actually put Gig on a Truck outside Perth Museum for the festival. And then we also worked subsequently with Helen and the team to host the civic reception on the Saturday night in the art gallery. I would also highlight a particularly special one, and this was where we first brought in our international programming into the project, and that was La Petita Malumaluga's Beatles for Babies, and this was the first time that they've ever performed their work in Scotland. And again, that started a longer term partnership where next year we hope to bring Bob Marley for babies, and so on and so forth. If I could have the next slide, please. So in the evening, we took a slightly different format from a traditional festival, and what we were really keen to do was properly animate the street as a kind of total playing area. So we created a sequential promenade performance that ran across the 3 stages as one whole show. And essentially what the evening format was intended to do was to focus on our core programming output and create a show that really represented everything that we are as an organisation. So you will see there with our musical theatre stage, it was complete with Yellow Brick Road. We had much loved local trad acts such as Ross Ainsley and the Sanctuary Band, who were actually part of the original opening of Perth Concert Hall 20 years ago. But also it was a really good opportunity to bring bigger headline acts like Walt Disco, who have roots in Perth, who came straight off a US tour to come back and play here. So it was a real opportunity to demonstrate the sheer wealth of talent that have came from this region, but not always had a showcase here. If I could have the next slide, please. Both for the daytime activities and the evening, inclusion was really important, and we wanted to ensure that the community could see themselves represented on our stages. I'm really pleased that through the event we actually ran 3 successful open calls for people to get involved in different ways beyond the community activities that I previously highlighted. So with the Cardboard Perth exhibition, which we presented in the foyer of Perth Theatre during the day, 92 local school pupils were involved in creating that. Surge Community Street Theatre did an open call for anyone aged 12 plus to get involved in street theatre workshops. And then I think the highlight, particularly for our staff, because some of them participated, on the finale of the musical theatre stage, we actually did an open call where any member of the public could come along and learn Mamma Mia. And that was projected on site for everyone to see at the end of the show. Another partnership which is highlighted and really important when we get into some of the key stats is the support that we've had from Stagecoach, and that builds on previous projects that have been presented to scrutiny, such as transforming audience travel through art, which all leans into our work in encouraging more people across Perth and Kinross to use active and sustainable modes of travel. If I could have the next slide, please. So I would caveat this by saying this is just some of our headline stats. We are only 10 days out from the event, so we are still gathering more data. For example, the 4,122 attendees is only those who were recorded on site. We still have numbers to compile for Gig on a Truck, which we're estimating was about 300 people over the course of the weekend. Just going back to the point about Stagecoach, I was really pleased to see that almost half of people cited that they used active or sustainable travel to travel into the city for the event. Just to give you an idea of where that relates to our normal audience travel. Generally on events within the theatre and concert hall, 82% of people are reliant on cars to get to the venue. So that was a real success for me. Similarly, for pretty much, well, just over a quarter of our audiences to be children, and for them to participate and to get to show their family and friends the active contribution they made to the event is a really big win. And another one that's really important because it's a key group that we have committed to working with over the next 3 years to ensure greater representation on our stages is members of the LGBTQIA+ community, where we saw a spike, and part of that was through the programming of Walt Disco as our main headliner, which was really important. But we were also really pleased to work with Perth Pride, who did a dedicated ticket offer for their mailing list as well. If I could have the next slide, please. On a project of this scale, it was a great opportunity to develop new and lasting partnerships for the organisation, some of which we already had, for example, St Johnstone, through projects like Oh When the Saints, and that was a good opportunity to reignite that. Working with Care Sound was a brilliant opportunity because we managed to actually broadcast the show into 32 care homes and 12 sheltered housing units. I do have to give a shout out to my colleague Darren, who unfortunately isn't here today, but it was a great opportunity to develop a food court and work with a lot of local suppliers who again have not had the opportunity to sell their produce within the city centre. And beyond the kind of core sponsorship partnerships, we were also really lucky to bring in special involvement from local businesses like Morris Leslie, who actually contributed vehicles which ended up being part of the show, and similarly the Suter Foundation. If you could move to the next slide, please. So all in, based on the figures that we have at the moment, though this may go up further, we're looking at a direct economic impact on the event of 1.16 million. Over the course of the weekend, on the Saturday night particularly, all of the restaurants surrounding us were fully booked. All of the hotels were fully booked, so much so that some of our artists had to get papped up the road because we couldn't get them hotel rooms. So it felt like a really exciting moment for us, given that we talk about impact regularly, to be able to look at the benefits that it's brought to others within the city centre, and to look at how we can learn and build on those relationships further, particularly with businesses like Kiza's, who are always incredibly supportive, and sure they had all the staff out dancing at the end of the night. Similarly, there was an amazing moment at one point. I turned round on the Sunday night and everyone was in the windows of the Premier Inn dancing along. So it's been a really, really good opportunity for us to strengthen those relationships. Moving forward, if I could have the next slide, please. Although this event was really the pinnacle of our anniversary celebrations, we have delivered a number of other special events over the course of the year, and that will continue up until December. In a very different scale, but still incredibly important. I'm really pleased that Patrick Sanford, our new Associate Director, who was actually the original trainee director under Joan Knight in the 1970s, brings his show Groomed to Perth Theatre. This is an incredibly important show. It's one of the most remarkable pieces of theatre that I've seen in the past 5 years, and he's already doing a lot of work with community organisations to explore the themes of the show and the healing that the show brings. Similarly, Stuart McGugan toured to Perth Theatre in the 70s, and he's bringing Aesop, Coco and me to the theatre with his son. So it really builds on that intergenerational focus of our work, not just through our audiences, but through our programming. And lastly, and this is really important in terms of future programming and our focus on dance, one of our core learning and engagement projects is Dance for Parkinson's. We deliver that every week. And Ryan Corbett, who has done a lot with us through our lunchtime concerts and then moved on to the Classical Star series, came to us wanting to develop his first tango band. But he's not stopping there. He's working with those community organisations to actually develop a performance that is participatory. So actually members of the community can learn the tango and will actually come and dance at the show rather than simply sitting and watching in the traditional classical music format. And then, of course, there's no show without punch as we conclude the season with Panto. Barry Hunter, of course, returns as Dame, but there's also been some recent changes in the team. We've brought a new lighting designer in, and we have Lauren as the Snow Queen, which is a really nice opportunity for a bit of diversity in what we do, particularly given that it's a lesser known Panto title. In fact, I say lesser known, it's very well known as a Christmas show. It'll be the first time the Snow Queen has been presented as a Panto. So that's a really exciting opportunity in which to conclude our anniversary year. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Christopher. We'll do any specific questions, I think, for Perth Theatre and Concert Hall just now. And then at the end, if there are any general ones that go across all of the three alios, we'll do a question and answer session then. So are there any questions for Mr. Glasgow? Councillor Massey.
Thank you. I noticed on social media there was a lot of questions about the fact that the comms weren't very good around 125. I'd just like an answer about that. Why were the comms not that great? And also, the second question is value for money. How will you show that this has been value for money, the cost of the 125? Thank you.
So from a comms point of view, I'm going to assume you're speaking specifically about general comms for the public as opposed to our marketing and PR campaign, which I'm also welcome and happy to expand on if that's helpful. I would say from Perth Theatre and Concert Hall's point of view, we undertook everything that was required of us in terms of licensing and changes to road restrictions, etc., within a timely manner. And we have a detailed breakdown of all the actions that we undertook, which we can share with committee members if required. But I'm aware that other colleagues from PKC may wish to expand on that.
Mr. Bowman.
Yes, committee. Obviously, we were aware of the kind of the social media. We're undertaking currently a debrief to look at any kind of lessons learned and how we ensure as a council we support any external organisations with any kind of events. So we will take any lessons learned from the 125 event.
It was actually more about the fact of people not being aware that the event was going on. That I'm talking about comms and I'd like you to answer the value for money and how you're going to provide the estimate of how this has been value for money, the 125 celebration.
So I think maybe more a question about marketing of the event.
Yes, so in terms of marketing for the event, we ran a nationwide campaign which launched on the 5th of July of last year. That began digitally. And then from May of this year, when we announced the headliners, we also ran an outdoor media campaign, which included with partner Stagecoach across the buses. For the first time ever, we also moved our media relations externally and worked with the agency Premier, who'd done a lot for Restless Natives, not through us, but through our co-producing partners in that case. And we placed coverage on local and national radio. We placed press coverage locally, nationally, and also internationally. And then we had the softer touch approach through more traditional methods like print distribution, leaflets, flyers, posters, all the way through digital media, social media, and email comms. Yep, so on value for money, as I mentioned, obviously we're only 10 days out from the event, which is quite a tight turnaround in terms of comprehensive reporting. But our approach would be, as we've done in previous years, to produce a full impact report, which we normally circulate around councillors and officers around about December time, once we've concluded our impact for the year, because I also think the reporting on 125 Live shouldn't sit in isolation. It needs to be framed within a context of all of our anniversary work, but also our wider annual programming.
Okay, thank you, Vice Convener.
Thank you. My question is also about economic impact. There are some numbers presented on your second from final slides, and thank you for the presentation. You mentioned there a direct economic impact of 1.16 million, and elsewhere it mentions that around about 4,000 people have attended things. That would imply that each of those 4,000 people spent around about £290. My view is that a minority of the people for a one-day event would need to stay overnight. So where does that spend of £290 per head arise from, please? Thank you.
So our direct economic impact studies don't only focus on audience expenditure, it also takes into account the fact that we had 200 artists staying in the city. In some cases, many of those artists were on site for a week. We also had suppliers staying on site, so people like Blacklight and DM Audio had teams on site from Wednesday. We had external security teams. We then also have the economic impact of our staff coming in and out of the city, some of whom had to stay overnight because we were doing through the night shifts. And then there's the impact of the procurement on the show itself. So for example, all of the stages had to be sourced from out with Perth and Kinross. In fact, one of the stages had to come from out with Scotland. So all of that gets counted into the economic impact as well. It's not solely the public.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is about a different area. So I'm turning now to the financial report that you provided. Thank you for that in the document pack. And my question is about the line for cultural rental income. That seems to be the biggest sort of miss or variance versus budget. And I noticed that last year as well, at this point, you were somewhere between sort of a third and a quarter away from budget. Can you tell us a bit about what cultural rental income, is, and whether that is something that you'll recover through the course of the financial year? Thank you.
Of course. So we have two different types of rental income, and last year within the budget we changed the cultural rental income just to make it a wee bit clearer. So within commercial GP, that's where we include things like our commercial hires, like conference income. Cultural rental income is, for example, an external music promoter that doesn't want to come in on a split ticket deal, rather they just want to rent the hall and take the risk, essentially. It's a really hard one to predict because the sector in and of itself is quite up and down at the moment. One of the things that does impact, though I should caveat not negatively, on our cultural income during Q1 is there is a period within May that's quite popular for music tours where we work more closely with Perth Festival of the Arts. So they come in a very specific deal with us, which we're working with them moving forwards to look at how actually both organisations can make that work more productively. I would say in terms of the autumn season is when it gets very, very busy, because that is when conferences go through the roof, and also the kind of Christmas rentals, your likes of Abamania, etc., want in and everybody's vying for space. But yeah, it's one of those ones that on budgeting year to year, it's very hard to predict because the patterns of the wider sector, we don't always know what they're going to be when we do the budget.
Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Convener. My question is, in days gone by, what is now a successful Perth Museum, there was a view that that should be flattened to create some sort of plaza or performance space. My question is, in terms of, well, first of all, congratulations on running what was a hugely ambitious event. You know, that I think is comes across in spades, and from those you know that I've spoken to, and again a celebration of some of the talent from Perth. So you know, well done. But in terms of that particular performance space, you obviously had the vagaries of the Scottish weather which you can't plan for, but physically, the venue area and the nature of the space beside the concert hall, how did you feel that worked, and do you feel that would be a good opportunity to use that space in a similar way again? Thank you.
I don't want to say this with bias, but I feel it worked very well. Previously, when we've done events, it's only been in the Horse Cross Plaza, which is obviously much smaller capacity. I think that worked really well as a food court this time because it's got that lovely rounded shape. What was really special though was actually looking at the built infrastructure round about the organisations, and Mill Street's exceptional in the sense that it's got exceptional lighting and projection surfaces. So like the Marcus and Spencer's car park, I mean, it essentially allowed us to create a fully immersive space in an outdoor environment. And that for me was what really elevated the event for us and made it a really exciting opportunity for artists to get to properly play with that space. And it was interesting, just as you mentioned, the weather. I was saying to Stephen and Kenny before we came in, one of our board members came on the Saturday night, which was very, very busy. And then the Sunday night was quieter because we'd had the rain. But interestingly, she noted the difference in experience because it suddenly became so much more intimate and therefore even more immersive on the Sunday night. So I thought it was a really exciting space to play with. I mean, some people had asked why we had chosen that particular space, but for us it just seemed logical because of course it's in between both venues. So yeah, it was really good fun.
Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, convener, and thank you for your presentation, which was, and congratulations on what was a really successful event. Could we go back to the financial statement that you've given us as well? It's showing a proposed deficit of £212,000 so far anticipated this year, which I find quite alarming. How do you propose funding that deficit, and what steps are you going to take to reduce it? Thank you.
So as you know, we've been in deficit for the past year, and we've faced a really challenging fundraising landscape. In fact, over the past year, a number of larger trusts and foundations have had to close down altogether because they're simply the funds. Similarly, we're seeing other trusts and foundations pivoting in terms of their strategies and where their areas of focus are going to be moving forwards. We are, of course, continuing to apply to different trusts and foundations for other areas of our work, particularly our learning and engagement and community outreach. I think there is more scope for us to grow our individual giving, not just in terms of our standard Friends scheme, but new programmes such as the Patron scheme, of which we just did a new patron join last week. I think there is scope to build on the sponsorship partnerships that have came through 125 Live, but I think we would be remiss to put all of our eggs within that fundraising basket, which is very challenging. So one of the things we're moving on to look at now collaboratively with our staff, which was a recent recommendation of the ALU review and based on learnings and that kind of skills development process that we spoke about as part of 125 Live, is to work with the teams to look more closely at workforce planning and where we can foster better cross-departmental working in order to reduce some of our costs.
Thank you for that. Could I possibly have a little follow-up? Is it likely you may have to approach the council to help address that end of year deficit?
At this stage, I would say it's too early in our plans. I think we would want to do wider work at looking at the kind of mix of support that we get from the council. So currently our SLA is now down to less than £1 million. There is a current 4% cut also planned for next year. There's the continuing pressures of national insurance, real living wage, and although we're very lucky to receive the COSLA Pay Award, it only represents 18% of our total payroll costs that have risen over the past year because of national insurance and real living wage.
Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. If you just bear with me a second, my question has disappeared. Are there any other questions? Can you come back to me in a second? No. It's with regard. Wait a second. I can get this to go back. Yeah. It's with regards to the people who attended. There were 4,000, and there were people who paid. I think it might have been 1,000 or whatever it is. I'm just, can you tell me about the differentials between both and how we encourage more people to pay next time? Thank you.
Yes, so I think one of the challenges that we faced from the outset was the expectation that the event in its entirety would be free. We obviously did a lot of fundraising for the event. We raised £308,000 in the event for the through a variety of sources. It was really important to us in terms of accessibility that we did a free festival during the day, but in the evening we wanted to focus on keeping ticket prices accessible, but also ensuring that there was a perception of quality to the show. And I think sometimes making everything completely free can immediately devalue it. One of the key pieces of feedback that we got, though interestingly a lot from people out with Perth and Kinross, they couldn't believe the value of the ticket price for the scale of the show. And that's something I'm quite keen that we do a wider data exercise, not actually just with Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, but look more widely at value for money and expectations around price. We do that on our ticket pricing reviews. So for example, over the past 3 years, our ticket prices have been frozen, whereas now we're relooking at that again because we have to. I think in the evening, despite it being a high value ticket price, in my opinion, we also did a number of special offers. So I mentioned Perthshire Pride earlier. We also did an exclusive offer for Perth Festival of the Arts audiences because of the very loyal and trusted relationship we have with them. And then the other really important one, which it sits under tickets, but actually it's a form of fundraising, was the introduction of the Ticket Bank with Perth Citizens Advice Bureau. And that was actually about addressing that even a ticket price of £20 is still challenging for people in the current environment. And actually, how could we increase accessibility, still fundraise for the project, but remove any uncomfortable perceptions for people who couldn't otherwise afford to attend. So the reason for bringing about the ticket bank was allow people to essentially pay it forward for those that wanted to come to the evening show. And that's something that we're going to continue indefinitely now as part of our programming.
Thank you. I've got my page back now. The second part of my question was with regards to, you're suggesting there were 12% were from a lower socio-economic background. Can you tell me how you garner that number, and then how do we increase that given that there's such a value in the ticket pricing?
Yes, so developing audiences from areas of socio-economic deprivation has been a big focus for us over the past 3 years. So we do that through a mixture of tools. We have the SIMD index from the Scottish Government and our Booker data, but we also use surveys and a tool called Audience Answers, which allows us to map where audiences are coming from. It remains a key focus, not just in terms of trying to encourage people to come to the venues. You might have heard the phrase before, harder to reach, but actually that's wrong. We need to think about ourselves more as being harder to access and how we go out into the community to do more. So the first kind of big focus within the business plan for the past year has been looking at how learning and engagement is not viewed as an add-on, but it's bolted into everything we do. And this project was a really good way of demonstrating that, because for me, we might be working with marginalised communities who participate in our engagement activities, but if they're not crossing over into actually engaging with our programme of work, then we're not doing our job properly. So you might remember that one of the other key focuses for the next 3 years is about our site-specific work. Gig in a Truck was a great example of that when it started in 2021, because that was about combating isolation in communities during the pandemic, and then it's since evolved to looking at rural isolation more generally. And the fact that that will now be able to go out into communities rather than always expecting people to come to us is a really key moment for us to build on. And we're now in discussions with other programming organisations, much as we did in 2023 and 2024 with site-specific theatre work, to be able to take more music performances and theatre events, not simply participatory projects, out into communities in order to build that audience more.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more specific questions for Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, so we'll move on to Live Active Leisure. I'm not sure who's leading the presentation here, but if you want to introduce yourself and carry on with the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. So my name is Phil Coleman, and I am the Service Manager for Physical Activity and Sport with Live Active Leisure. So our presentation this morning will cover the three different aspects that the committee have asked to be updated on. So firstly, how are Live Active Leisure supporting increased physical activity opportunities for older people or those with long-standing poor health? This element will be covered by myself and our Vice Chair, Dr. Daniel Carey. Secondly, we'll provide an update on the integrated strategic mapping of sports halls and artificial pitches in Perth. This will be covered by Andrew Brown, our Head of Business Development. And finally, we'll provide some initial feedback on the new venue in Blairgowrie following its opening on the 29th of August, and Gary Watson, our Head of Operational Services, will cover that section. If we can move the slide forward, please. Thank you. So in terms of Live Active Leisure supporting increased physical activity opportunities for older adults or those who have long-term conditions, this very much falls within our wellbeing service within Live Active Leisure, where we have a team of qualified and experienced individuals who are delivering and developing a range of activities and opportunities that makes it much easier for this client group to access physical activity within their own communities. In recent years, we have been able to expand our wellbeing service, our wellbeing team, through funding from a range of different local and national partners, aligning our shared aims and objectives to achieve even better outcomes for the people of Perth and Kinross. And some of these partners are noted on the slide. And by working together, the overall aim is to create a progressive physical activity pathway within each locality of Perth and Kinross. Can move the slide forward, please. So the diagram on this screen is really just a very simplistic model of this pathway. So at one end of the spectrum, we have services and programs for those who are very inactive or may even struggle with basic mobility, moving all the way along to those who maybe require just a little bit of advice, a little bit of signposting into becoming independently active. But in effect, it's a pathway that whatever your level of fitness, your mobility, whatever long-term condition you may have, there's an entry point for everybody at some point on that pathway. And over the next few slides, I'll just pick out a couple of our wellbeing projects that fit into this pathway, giving an overview of exactly how we are supporting increased physical activity opportunities for older people and those with long-standing poor health. Next slide, please. So starting off with our work within care environments, and first off we have services that we deliver within care homes or residential housing complexes, and these tend to be group activity sessions. They can take different forms, but typically they are chair-based classes or seated circuit type classes, but very much designed to fit the needs of the individuals and the space that we have available. And the sessions do tend to take place in communal areas within these facilities, and we get regular feedback from the participants and the staff within these settings that it's often the highlight of their week taking part in these classes, both from a physical activity perspective, but also that kind of the social and fun element of the class. So in the last financial year, we delivered these group activity sessions in more than 20 different care settings on a regular basis, with around 400 different people taking part in the activities. And so by taking our services to these settings, we really are ensuring that we can increase the opportunities for older adults to take part in physical activity. In terms of care at home, this is a relatively new service, maybe just coming into play since 2021. So our team receive referrals for individuals who are already receiving some sort of care package within their own home. So agencies will refer their service users to us because they believe with a little bit of support from ourselves, their clients could become more mobile, more confident in moving around their own home independently, finding it easier to carry out daily tasks and maybe being less reliant on others. So our team visit once a week for 10 weeks, working on a one-to-one basis with the referred client, doing simple exercises to improve strength, to improve balance, improve general mobility. And between visits, the clients are asked to do their homework and repeat these exercises every day. And the results after 10 weeks can be really significant, and it sets these service users on the right path to be able to take more control over their own mobility and their own general well-being. Referral numbers have increased year on year since we started this service, and this very much points to the fact that the social care providers and referrers are seeing the benefit that is being felt by their service users. We carried out more than 1,000 different home visits in the last year, so we're really confident that we are making a difference to some of the most vulnerable in our communities, and furthermore supporting ongoing pressures on the social care system. Our Care at Home programme is one such referral scheme that we have, but if we can move the slide forward, please. We have another two referral schemes that I'll just quickly touch on that support older adults or those with long-term conditions. So we have our buddy walking programme, another one-to-one offering from Live Active Leisure, and in some cases a great next step on the pathway from those who have completed the Care at Home programme. So within this project, individuals are referred if they're inactive and if they are generally unable to leave their house unaccompanied, and our member of staff will meet the person at their front door, and over the course of 8 to 10 weeks gradually build up their confidence and their ability to walk more short distances within their own community. The funding for this project comes from Transport Scotland, and their main indicator of success is that more people are choosing to walk within their own communities. And so we've been really successful in being able to evidence impact of this on this front. If we look at some of the stats on the screen, these are from last year, but of 65 who actually completed the intervention, 60 then went on to walk independently within their own community. And so remembering that these individuals are largely housebound unless a carer or a relative can support them out of the house, it's really quite an incredible statistic and highlights the impact that a little bit of support can make. Moving on to our activity referral scheme, or some of you may have heard it referred to in the past as our GP referral scheme. Well-established programme within our wellbeing service, and it continues to offer expert advice and support to those who are referred with a wide range of different medical conditions, and individuals are given a bespoke activity plan based on their own condition or ability, and they're supported to be active over a 12-week period. As I say, this is a fairly well-established programme within our service, but a couple of developments that I just wanted to highlight to the committee today. So in partnership with NHS Tayside, we're actually exploring a new process for referral that will allow health professionals to refer to us using an online platform. So this really should make that process far more streamlined, easier for our health professionals, but also from our perspective, it will help with data collection and ongoing reporting. And linked to this, we're actually leading on a national project to try to capture better the impact of activity referral schemes across Scotland. So our project has brought together 12 different leisure trusts, Napier University and Public Health Scotland, with the collective aim of trying to improve consistency relating to data capture. So I suppose to put you in the picture, almost all trusts would deliver some sort of activity referral scheme, but there's not really a consistent approach. There's different data being captured in one area to the next, different questionnaires being asked to determine impact, and different ways of recording and reporting. So our project aims to align all of this data so that we're in a much stronger position to evidence the impact of activity referral schemes locally and nationally. So an exciting piece of work, and it's good that Perth and Kinross and Live Active Leisure are at the forefront of this. If I could have the final slide in this section, please. So beyond referral schemes, moving slightly further down the pathway, we have our wellbeing classes that are delivered all across our venues and community venues across Perth and Kinross. A range of different classes are available, all of which allow participants to work at their own level. Some examples are noted on the slide there of the types of classes. We also have dedicated gym times across our venues, and this is just where our wellbeing staff are on hand to provide support to those who maybe feel a little bit less confident about accessing the gym. Now, these activities are perhaps more mainstream, if you like, in that you don't need a referral to attend them, and the level of support is perhaps not as intensive as some of the one-to-one interventions that I mentioned earlier. But they're a significant part of the physical activity pathway, and they play a hugely important role in supporting increased activity levels for older adults across Perth and Kinross. And I think the numbers on the screen point to that, with over 20,000 attendances in the last year. Many of these individuals remain within the wellbeing classes for years as the sessions continue to meet their needs, and because of the social nature of these sessions. But for others, I suppose the pathway that I've defined today, it doesn't need to end within wellbeing. It can extend into other departments of Live Active Leisure, into mainstream fitness, into memberships. And actually, if we look at our 3,700 fitness members that we have at the moment, approximately 650 of them are over the age of 65. So where some people may start on our pathway as a wellbeing customer, many can and do and are encouraged to progress to much more than that. I'll now pass you on to Danny, our Vice Chair, who will just add in a few final words to this section.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. I'm a retired GP, and as such, I've had first-hand experience of the impact of the programmes, which Phil has very succinctly outlined to you today. I was very much an advocate for referring patients to Live Active, particularly through the GP referral scheme, or the activity referral scheme, as it's now called, which became a key driver for me really to join the Live Active board, to share my experiences from the GP side and hopefully help and influence some of the services that we're now providing through Live Active. And there's no doubt in my mind that this has made a big impact on the physical activity for older and adults and those with impaired health, and improving their situations. So that was just really a little comment that I wanted to add at the end of Phil's presentation.
Good morning, committee. I'm Andrew Brown. I'm the head of business development, and as Phil said, I'll provide a brief update on the strategic mapping of sports halls and the artificial pitches in Perth. If you could have the next slide, that's there. So a bit of background to this. Since 2022, the company have worked in close partnership with the council on the block booking allocation of synthetic outdoor pitches within Perth, whether these are managed by the council or whether they're managed by Live Active Leisure. The initial driver for this was the temporary loss of the pitch at Perth High School to make way for the new building. And this resulted in a need to manage bookings across the remaining pitches in a more strategic way, ensuring that they were allocated on a fair, reasonable and transparent basis to the various clubs and groups that wish to use them. On a similar basis and for similar reasons, since 2023, the company have led the same process for block bookings of the internal sports halls within the city. And this year we successfully collaborated with colleagues at UHI Perth to include the facilities within their Academy of Sport and Wellbeing within the process. Clubs and groups were invited to submit an application for a block booking within the facilities operated by LAL, PKC and UHI. and LAL coordinated the responses and mapped all of the requests to identify the best solution to both accommodate as many requests as possible, but also to maximise the utilisation of the available halls. This was then followed up with a booking confirmation alongside further information on contact details and payment arrangements, which still differs between the three organisations. And there are slight differences between the process that we apply for sports halls and pitches. What we are confident of, though, is that the involvement of Live Active Leisure in the process, with our close links to clubs and our understanding of venue operations, has added substantial value and ensured that many more clubs and groups have been able to be accommodated, both indoors and outdoors, than might have been otherwise. We're also greatly appreciative of the approach from colleagues at UHI Perth, as there are several occasions in the coming year where they've agreed to be flexible to ensure that certain bookings can be accommodated. If you can move the slide on, please. So the slide on screen summarises the numbers behind this year's mapping process, specifically for indoor halls. Excuse me. And by the application deadline this year, 73 different clubs had submitted various requests for sports halls over the forthcoming winter. All groups received an offer of space. In total, there were 112 different requests. 108 of the 112 requests received an offer of space, and all of the offers that were made were for the day that was requested. 97% of the 108 offers were for the size of hall requested, and in 2 of the 3 cases where we weren't able to offer the specific size of hall, we were able to offer additional time to compensate and to allow the same number of participants to attend, which the bookies accepted. 96% or 104 of the 108 offers were within 1 hour of the start time requested. And we've also been able to retain some space throughout each day of the week for ad hoc casual users and pay and play activities. What this illustrates is that with appropriate intervention and liaison with clubs during the application process, the majority of block booking requests can be accommodated within the existing estate. This, however, is not without some challenges. And there are pinch points at peak times where there is limited flexibility about when groups can come in. We're really grateful to those clubs that accepted times slightly later or slightly earlier than they'd requested in order to accommodate others. And the flexibility and understanding of clubs is an essential component in the success of this process. We're also aware that there's some investment required to some of the school venues in order to fully accommodate the allocated bookings. And we've asked clubs to bring any issues with their allocated venue to our attention as soon as possible so that we can find a solution. We're working collaboratively with colleagues in PKC Property Services and in Education who are committed to improving the estate for community access wherever possible. This has already resulted in some orders being placed for new equipment such as adjustable basketball hoops, pickleball nets and table tennis dividers for some venues, and the relining of halls to accommodate other activities at others. The availability of daytime court space Monday to Friday remains a challenge, although the inclusion of UHI Perth in this year's mapping process has helped address some of this, and discussions are ongoing with PKC about the potential to open up access within the school estate at certain times during the school week to provide additional capacity. While there are some compromises both indoor and outdoor at the moment, the planned upgrade of synthetic pitch surface at Perth Academy, the reinstatement of the pitch at Perth High School and the completion of PH2O will significantly improve availability and options both indoor and outdoor going forward. And further to this, planned initiatives by local football clubs to develop their own facilities will do the same. Whilst some improvements have already been made, we do know that the actual booking process could be slicker from a customer perspective, and the mapping process is part of a broader transformation of leisure assets, and a working group's been established between LAL and PKC to discuss this further and further develop the overall process. However, the immediate priority this year was to find a space for as many bookings as possible, which has been a relative success.
Good morning, committee.
and Gary Watson, Head of Operational Services. The final part of the presentation provides a brief update on some of the numbers and customer feedback from the initial 2 weeks of operation of the new Live Active Leisure Blairgowrie. So despite the delays in the opening and some of the initial technical issues, the responses from the community to the new venue has been overwhelmingly positive. There were approximately 5,000 visits to the new venue in the first 2 weeks, which compared to 2,500 visits to the old centre at the same time last year. You can see this illustrated on the screen, now broken down into fitness classes, fitness gym, swim and sports hall, with the blue bar representing last year's figures and a much larger orange bar representing this year. And overall, nearly 1,500 different people have visited the venue, ranging from babies to our oldest user at 8 to 9 year old, emphasising that this is a venue for the entire community. 327 customers have taken advantage of the 7-day fitness pass offer, and in the 2 weeks we have sold 126 new memberships. The new facility have allowed us to introduce new fitness classes such as spin and virtual classes, which have been in demand through other venues, and also increased an additional aquafit class. These figures do not include school use. However, the school have been able to introduce a wider variety of activities, both during the school day and lunchtime and after school. Next slide, please. The final slide shows just a small selection on some of the comments and feedback that we have received since the venue opened, which has been nice to hear. Other comments we have received include feedback on one customer on the pool pod, which assists customers with mobility issues into the pool, saying it has provided them with the opportunity to get back into swimming again after losing confidence. The local swim club had advised that it feels like they have gone from 0 to 100 in terms of quality of kit, including diving blocks, timing pads and spectator area. And the badminton club had advised us that had a significant number of people coming and trying badminton who will hopefully become members of the club. However, perhaps the most endorsement of the new facility came from a high school pupil who, when asked what he thought of the new facilities, simply replied, "Decent." Thank you.
Thanks very much to all the representatives from Live Active Leisure there, particularly though Mr. Coleman and Dr. Carey. I thought that was a really interesting few slides about an area of Live Active Leisure's work that people will not associate with Live Active Leisure. If I put my other hat on as chair of the Integration Joint Board, I know how important and valuable it is to support and maintain mobility within that elderly and frail sector of the community. So thank you for that. Members, we'll go to questions, and Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. This is a bit awkward looking around here. I'll try. Thank you very much, by the way, for that presentation. Okay. My questions here really are about the future and going forward, etc. You probably know I've had a lifetime in sport, and so I'm very much involved in it. Would I be involved in the well-being one? Yes, well, I'm that age, okay, but I'm active. And the disappointment I've been finding with Live Active Leisure is your feelings are going forward. In other words, what's happening going forward. For instance, paddle. Have you any future development for that, for instance, in the new Thimble Row? Pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports with an elderly population. You have not provided nets to certain groups. We've had to provide them ourselves, which is very disappointing. You have not provided a court as such, because if you know, a pickleball court needs a kitchen and it needs special lining. So I just feel that you need to pick up a wee bit more on that if you can. Okay. And my question would be to you, in Thimble Row, have you built this into it? Have you gone forward with it? That's just part of it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So in terms of, it's disappointed here, the availability of equipment such as nets and lines. What I would say on that is, following the mapping process this year that we've conducted with the council, we are compiling a list of what equipment now needs to be in specific venues. So I touched on it in the presentation there. We're maybe a bit late to the party, but orders have been placed for nets, and we have placed some orders for lining of the kitchen line within the court, starting with North Inch Community Campus. So I would hope that would be in. I don't have a date, but I would hope that would be in sometime soon after October in that venue, and then we will look at that for the other venues where pickleball is being played. And I would absolutely confirm that will be, those sorts of lines will be in the games hall that's planned for PH2O. In terms of paddle, we don't have any immediate plans or any real opportunity within the venues that we currently manage to do that. And it's not included within the initial facility mix for PH2O, but that's perhaps something that we can look at in conjunction with council officers.
Okay, and the next question is from Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener, and thank you to the team for the presentation, and quite detailed again. I picked up on your point there about the programme of delivery for new pitches or replacement pitches at Perth Academy and High School. I just wondered what the plan was out with Perth, or for instance, Auchterarder.
Currently, at the moment, Live Active Leisure, we don't manage any of the pitches or any of the green space. That is part of some of the discussions that we're having with the council about how to manage the sort of sporting estate moving forward. But we've not got into that level of detail about whether we would take on management of the pitches that are currently out there.
Councillor Welch.
Thank you. It's a question or two questions, if that's okay. First of all, I'm in correspondence with Andrew just with regards to Phoenix basketball, and I look forward to sort of taking that one forward with him. And I guess linked to that, these statistics are very good, and you've done a huge and challenging job to fit in a number of clubs and organisations, but the statistics per se tell one story, but I think it's also important to understand, if you like, the satisfaction of your customers as well as part of this committee, because essentially it's not just about numbers and fitting in. And I think in terms of the correspondence with Phoenix, it's all about creating this essence of what a club is and how it feels a sense of identity in the venues that it's at, and how for volunteers it really ensures that process is as straightforward as possible. So I think in terms of the statistics you present, it may be useful to demonstrate it from a customer facing perspective as well, going forward, because that will help us help you and you demonstrate to us how that is changing. So that's my first question. Can you present some additional information around responses from the clubs that you're working with? The second question is, and it was raised earlier, in terms of paddle. Paddle is, together with pickleball, one of the fastest growing sports in the UK. And my question is, have you engaged with any paddle operators with a view to seeing if there's some form of partnership that can be put in place where some of maybe the capital provision can be provided by others, but still give a significant public benefit? Because I'm thinking, for example, the Bells gym hall, which is physically an excellent sized building, could be repurposed, for example, as some form of paddle centre, and provide confidence that we're really looking to support that particular sport. Thank you.
Just on the first point about the kind of the customer experience, if you like, in the halls, very conscious that the presentation and numbers there, I'm talking about the offers that have been made to groups and the offers that have been accepted, but we are very much in the early stages of their block bookings. So that there may be some unintended consequences or some issues that arise that we perhaps hadn't foreseen. We've been quite open about that with all of the groups that we've allocated space to say, look, please let us know. There are quick fixes we can put in place in some areas. Other things might require a bit more planning and a bit more thought and a bit more time to implement. But we need to know about these issues so as we can make the state as flexible and as good experience for these groups as possible. So we are very mindful of that. I think the process gets better each year we do it. Last year was the first year really in essence that we'd done it, we'd had to do it with sports halls. So we've taken some learning from that into this year. We've moved some groups from venues that didn't quite work for them last year into different venues. And we think and we hope we've got a closer match on what will be suitable venues for each club. Like I said, there's still some compromises. We can't always give people their preferred venue, but what we can give them is an assurance that we will do everything reasonable to make the venue we've allocated them suitable for them. And like I say, some of that might take a bit of time. In terms of paddle, we're very aware of the growth of paddle and pickleball. Pickleball much easier to incorporate into our existing infrastructure and our venues. No is the answer. We haven't had direct contact with any paddle authorities yet, but we are sort of keeping an eye on it from a distance, speaking with other trusts about how they've managed to introduce it. It's the challenge at the moment of where we would be able to introduce that into our existing estate without compromising other activities that we've got. But yeah, we are very mindful that it is fast growing and we are absent of an offer for that within Perth at the moment.
Thank you. And say all I do is encourage you to maybe look at some of the repurposing of some of our ex-LAL facilities to see whether there's opportunities there and potentially with additional support externally. Thank you.
Mr. Mass.
Thank you, convener. As the former older persons champion for Perth and Kinross, this is really a comment and a question. I've seen firsthand the transformative impact that regular physical activity can have on the lives of older adults. Live Active Leisure continues to play a vital role in promoting health, well-being and social connection amongst our older population. The tailored programmes not only support physical fitness, but also help reduce isolation, improve mental health and foster a sense of community. And I thank LAL for their inclusive approach and ongoing commitment to ensuring that older people across Perth and Kinross can live active, independent and fulfilling lives. My question is on the one-to-one. During my time as older persons champion, I've talked to a lot of people that give one-to-one training for physical activity for older people. But one of the things they all had in common was that they were trained to spot any other issues that the older person had. Are your team trained to spot anything out with the remit of the one-to-one?
Yeah, so the wellbeing team that I described earlier, they are all qualified in their level 3 exercise referral qualifications, and some of them have level 4 qualifications in cardiac and stroke and cancer rehab. So is it their job to identify other illnesses and conditions? No, but they have a lot of expertise and training to be able to advise correct activity prescription based on their qualifications.
If they spotted something, they could refer it to the appropriate person.
Yeah, absolutely. So links back and forward between physios and GPs goes both ways. Yep.
Councillor Illingworth. Thank you, convener. Have you ever considered working with the independent education sector to see if they have some spare capacity that you could work on?
You mean in terms of sports halls and pitches? Yes, we've considered it. It's just not something we've got round to yet. But yeah, we are mindful that there are halls and pitches that are regularly used by community groups within Perth within those facilities. It's just joining it up, but that would be the next step. This year we brought, like I said in the presentation, we brought UHI Perth on board, which really helped, and we were really grateful for their approach. They bought into it. They were happy to take groups that they hadn't done before. So I think the next step is having those conversations with the schools you describe.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Smith, I see you've put a comment in. I'll let you come in at this point. I've got a question, but I'll let you come in. All right, okay. So my question is in terms of the new Blairgowrie Recreation Centre and feedback, but I guess it might apply across the entire piece. We've heard about the work that's being done with sports clubs in Perth, but there's a large user base there, which is just individual people going to either classes or to use the gym. And I just wondered how you gather feedback, particularly from New Blair Recreation, but across the piece from the individual users rather than the users who are part of a club or group who've got maybe a more elevated opportunity to have discussions and give you feedback because they're talking to you about the arrangements all the time. So how do individual users give feedback?
So we do annual surveys on our users and members and take feedback across the piece, in particular Blairgowrie, but we probably find the best way of getting direct feedback is we encourage them to speak to our staff, and we encourage our staff to speak to the users as well. So we can make, if anything, and that's positive and, you know, any challenging issues. And I think that's probably the key one that we try and encourage. But as I say, we do annual surveys as well.
And also on the New Blair Rec, there were some, Councillor Shires has referred to how fantastic the building is. I wondered on the slide where you had some of the feedback, has there been any negative feedback about the building or how it's used or the layout or the facilities? Has there been anything that's going to need tweaked in the future?
Not in terms of the facility. I think there's been some challenges, particularly around parking and access arrangements, which we're working with the council and BAM to resolve because there is still phase 2 to be done. So it was always going to be a temporary arrangement, but with nothing on the facility. It's generally been pretty positive, to be honest, and people are, you know, really excited to be using it.
Thanks very much. And certainly the point about the parking as well, given the proximity to the school, was something that I've had feedback on. I'm not seeing any more questions, so we'll go to comments. You wanted to make a comment, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. What I would like to say is that sports has many benefits across all ages, and there are new sports coming forward all the time. Pickleball, for instance, is really popular amongst an older generation of people, and paddle, the younger generation. I just hope that we have an opportunity not to be left behind here, because paddle, as Councillor Welsh has just explained, is now the fastest growing sport in Europe. America is the big one for pickleball. If you want to play paddle in this country, you can go to Gleneagles if you've got the pockets for it. There is one outdoor court at Bridge of Allen, and there's now a new development in Glasgow and Edinburgh. There's a huge opportunity there. So I hope that Live Active Leisure will look at it and bring it forward for the benefit of all people in Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to Councillors Smith and Welsh for not disappointing us with mention of pickleball in this committee meeting. We've got Culture, Perth and Kinross to go, but we have been sitting here for 2 hours. I was going to do the recess after the Alios, but I think we might take 10 minutes now to allow people to stand up and move about. We were talking about the necessity of physical activity earlier. The time is 11:32. We'll come back at 11:45. Okay, thank you. That's us back actually early, so well done, everybody. There is a meeting of Audit and Risk Committee at 1 o'clock. It's been pushed back to 1:30, but I think we will get done in time. But can I just maybe sort of reinforce the point that I've made before about keeping both questions and answers as concise as possible? Okay, we'll now move on to Culture, Perth and Kinross, and we've got Kenny McWilliam to give a presentation and to introduce the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for the opportunity to share these updates. He just flashed up there, but I'm also joined this morning online by a member of our board, James Findlay. Can I have the next slide, please? I'll start by updating you on some of the work being undertaken across the organisation to support health and wellbeing. However, this is just a snapshot of what we do. Our work with children and young people starts from birth, when we encourage sign up to the library service as part of our Every Child a Library member scheme. This encourages parents and carers to make use of free resources, not just for their child, but also for themselves, with a range of books and guides of parenting on every aspect of parenting, from sleep to weaning to taking care of themselves. Bookbug and Rhyme Time schemes specifically encourage early learning acquisition, as this is vital for the development of literacy skills. We coordinate and distribute the Bookbug gifting packs of books and information to all babies and children in Perth and Kinross. These support reading together, bonding and positive interactions, as well as giving adults signposting information for further support should they need it, should they require it. In the last 10 years, we have distributed 13,981 baby packs, 14,598 toddler packs, and 13,303 explorer packs, and over 12,000 family packs, which comes to just under 54,000 packs in total. Earlier this year, we launched the Hands-on Art, an innovative and interactive space for babies and young people and young children aged 0 to 3. This space is about encouraging the exploration of the world around them through multi-sensory activities, messy play, song and movement, to encourage engagement with art, early mark making, and also promotes positive parent and/or parent and child interactions, so necessary for strong relationships and learning. As a result of this development, we have been selected as a key partner in an early years innovation project called Mini Wonders, which is a partnership between National Galleries of Scotland and research and innovation charity Nesta. Our youth collective is a group of young people aged 16 to 25 who have an interest in culture and heritage, and they're working to give young people a strong voice at the heart of our planning, helping shape services to meet the increasingly complex needs of young people today. It is well understood that poverty and the cost of living crisis had major impacts on health and well-being, and we work in a number of ways to help people alleviate these impacts. We offer warm spaces in winter in all our libraries where people can sit all day if they wish to. You can see actually our new blanket hub shown on that slide up there, and is already stocked for winter. And we have a small army of volunteers who put their incredible knitting and crocheting skills to great use to produce these. We have also organised dressing up costume swaps to reduce the cost of Halloween and World Book Day without reducing the fun. And we've worked with Social Flock to mend and repair clothes and make available winter coats for children and adults. We have volunteers who are teaching sewing skills and run sewing together sessions to give people these skills to mend and upcycle clothes on their own, often very flamboyant outfits. Through our library sustainability coordinator, we run groups of classes which help people reduce their impacts on climate at a time when climate anxiety is on the increase. Our environmental film club is a fun and educational experience, and we have regular climate-themed book groups at the AK Bell Library. Our libraries also offer reminiscence sessions and our Playlist for Life, both of which has positive impacts for people living with memory loss. We also delivered very targeted work and collaborated with the clinical psychology team at Perth Prison to develop the Healthy Minds on Prescription, which follows on from our successful Reading for Recovery project. Can I have the next slide, please? I mentioned hands-on art at Perth Art Gallery, and I'm pleased to say that with the opening of this, the Mealy exhibition and the darkroom, we now have all the public spaces in the art gallery open for the first time in over 20 years. With slightly less money and fanfare than the museum, we have now established a world-class art gallery in Perth. 24-25 saw growth in our visitor numbers there with a 36% increase, and that trend has continued in the first quarter this year, up 38%, which is just under 6,000 visits on the same period last year. Figures for August now show that following the opening of the new Mealy exhibition, visitor numbers were up 32.5% on the previous August, which itself had been an exceptional month. The Mealy exhibition draws from the private collection of rarely seen artworks and personal belongings from the prominent Victorian artist John Everett Mealy and his Perthbowen wife, Euphemia Effie Chalmers. Mealy is widely regarded as one of Britain's greatest artists and is recognised around the world during his lifetime. The collection is part of a long-term loan from the artist's great-grandson, Sir Geoffrey Mealy, and the new gallery explores the profound connection between Mealy and Perthshire, a landscape that inspired several of his most celebrated works. Mealy's works are already held within Perth and Kinross collection, are also on display, but only a fraction of the extensive collection is on the display at this time. And over the coming years, conservation work, documentation and further research will be carried out so that the reputation of Perthshire as a cultural destination will be cemented. To maximise this opportunity, we're working with council officers and Visit Scotland on new itineraries for visitors, and we are building links with key locations such as Knoll Church and places frequented by Mealy and his family to build an understanding of the region as Mealy's Perthshire, which will appeal to tourists as well as locals. Can I have the next slide, please? Perth Museum has just seen the closure of the successful Macbeth exhibition. This exhibition was designed and produced by our own in-house team and touched on the origins of the real King Macbeth and how this and other issues of the times influenced Shakespeare when writing his play. Visitors were overwhelmingly positive about the exhibition, and we welcomed over 6,103 visitors, which included school groups, community groups, and tourists, with many unaware how many Perthshire locations were used within the play. As with all our exhibitions, the collaborators with artists and others with objects and material help us illustrate the history of its great long-term value. From the actual sapling baby of the Burnham Oak to costumes worn by Michael Fassbender and first edition manuscripts from the National Library of Scotland, the relationships built through these exhibitions extend our reach and bring new audiences to Perth. Overall, the museum has welcomed more than 86,000 visitors since April. And although there has definitely been a loss of footfall since the temporary closure of the Stone Experience, estimated to be somewhere between 100 and 130 visits per day, we are currently averaging around 550 visits per day, which is above our daily target. And with further upcoming exhibitions such as Perthshire Illustrated opening in October and Mary Queens of Scots' Last Letter in January, we remain confident that visitor targets for the year will be reached. I'm conscious that elected members are keen to understand what is happening with the Stone Experience. You will understand that due to the security arrangements that are surround the Crown object, I have to be careful what I can reveal. But what I will say is we've been working extensively with Scottish Government, Historic Environment Scotland, the case manufacturer and Police Scotland, and we are working towards a date. We expect the opening to be in time for the school holidays coming up. We will confirm a date very shortly once this has all been coordinated, and elected members and council officers will receive a briefing once this date has been confirmed. Can I have the next slide, please? I'm moving on to give an update on the progress with our library strategy, and I wanted to just briefly reshare the vision for this and the 4 key pillars around which this work is being built and was shared with you at the April meeting. Can I have the next slide, please? And the key aims for this will also remain the same. Can I have the next slide, please? The 5 libraries which were at risk of closure have seen the most progress to date with community meetings beginning in May. From an initial open meeting, we have formed smaller working groups to progress development of action plans. However, we keep membership of those groups open and anyone can attend, so there is some fluidity to our group membership. There have been lots of discussion, ideas and suggestions, and we're now at the stage of distilling that down into what is achievable within the space, the capacity and resource of both the library service and the local community. To give some more capacity to this work, we've engaged some temporary additional support from our colleague Robin Patel, who will work with local library staff to coordinate local meetings and ensure the development and implementation of plans stay on track. We are now beginning the process of widening this work out so that all of our libraries have an action plan, which is community involvement at its heart. We are also seeking additional funding to support some of the common themes emerging from this work, such as community and tourist information, combating digital isolation and increasing the engagement of local groups in making use of library spaces. There is no quick or fix or single solution to this, however. Communities remain opposed to taking on the running of service on a voluntary basis, and there are limited options for co-location of community services, which don't have unintended knock-ons for other venues or other organisations. But we are exploring all options. Each of the plans, once they are completed, will be monitored on an ongoing basis by a joint community and culture Perth and Kinross group to ensure that they remain reflective of the communities they seek to serve and that any issues or barriers to progress are identified early and addressed. The key focus is on increasing uses of the library service and increasing use of the buildings in which service sits to increase their long-term sustainability. Metrics will include the number of groups and organisations using the spaces out with the opening hours, the number of active borrowers and users of services such as reading groups, computers and community information. The timescales remain as reported at the last committee, with plans to be complete by the end of October, with implementation already underway with a number of key projects. Late summer 2026 plans will be reviewed and evaluated, with a report coming back to Council by the end of that year to feed into the budget setting cycle. Can I get the next slide, please? I just wanted to end on this list, which is taken from our social media post on the library service. One of the things that has come out very strongly from our community sessions is how much people value the services they use, but there remains a lack of awareness of the range of services that we deliver, and this is something that we are working on to address. Perth and Kinross libraries offer all of this. The activities highlighted in blue are available to all their local libraries, and the remaining list will vary depending on your location, but are still accessible for most. Losing a library is not just about losing the books it holds, it is losing a vital community service, which is a point of contact for many, giving them the tools and resources to live longer, healthier lives. I'm very happy to take any questions now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McWilliams. just wanted to say at the outset that having been at a number of the meetings between Culture Perth and Kinross and the local communities in terms of the keeping the libraries open, I think initially there was a sort of certain tension between the community and Culture Perth and Kinross, but the way those meetings have evolved and the discussions have evolved, and just exactly how surprised I was when we went into the August meetings and we actually saw physical draft plans, quite detailed, with numbers of action points for each of those, for each of the two libraries that I was going to the meetings for. It was really it was really heartening to see how much progress had actually been made. So thanks to the staff, because I know that there's a huge amount of time that's involved in that. And I know that the idea is to roll it out to the other libraries than the 5, and that will be a huge amount of work as well. So thanks for that. Can I open it up to questions? And the first question is from Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks to Kenny and his team. I've been at a few meetings in Auchterarder, as has Kenny, so he's probably aware of what I'm going to say, but let's do it anyway. There was much commendation from the local people in Auchterarder on the early work with regards to retaining the library in Auchterarder. There seems to be more of a disappointment at the lack of impetus, and it seems to be slowing down. And that, I believe, might be down to local issues and local volunteering. It's refreshing to see the significant uplift in the footfall since its saving, if that's the right word. And it'd be disappointing to see that fall by the wayside. I'm just trying to understand, you've got a plan there to have drafts in place for the 31st of August, 31st of October. I just wonder, are we in a good place with regards to delivering or getting to the place where we have those plans? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. As I've mentioned within the presentation, as the conveners already alluded to, each community is different and the capacity within each is different. So we're putting a lot of work in to make sure that that capacity building can be developed as best it can. And as I've mentioned within that, Robin Patel has been tasked with directly engaging with those groups, so that where we feel that some of the activities maybe need a wee bit more input and coordination with both council and community groups, we're putting that extra resource in so that there is a continuity and also capacity building within that process. A number of actions have already been taken forward. We're not waiting for draft plans to finish, but for reassurance, we are trying to move as many of those actions forward rather than waiting for a completed plan.
Vice Convener.
Thank you. Thank you for the updates. And I think I wanted to ask about the Stone of Destiny. I suppose it's unfortunate that the necessary process means it's taken you 2 months and possibly another month before you can get that back open. But my question was more out of interest related to the impact, if any, that has had on visitor numbers. Have you seen any noticeable decrease in visitor numbers as a result of the stone being unavailable to view? Thank you.
Yes, it's difficult to quantify because one of the conditions is, which is great, is the free at point of access, but we estimate between 100 visitors is lost per day, specific around the international visitor, and that is of greatest concern to us because one of the biggest draws for bringing people to the Perth area is to see the stone. So there has been a noticeable effect in terms of groups that are coming to visit with a very tight timescale. So we are working at looking at different ways of presenting information within the stone. But at the moment, yes, we are looking at about 100 visitors per day as a noticeable difference.
Any more questions? Normally there's more for Culture and Perth and Ross than that. Not seeing any more. Okay, open it up for comments if anybody wants to make any. Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Convener. Again, my comment is, there's been significant work done in this area, particularly with the repurposing of the art gallery, and certainly it's shamefully say it's a building, in the past I hadn't visited particularly, and but it's in terms of a vibrant offering for Perth. It's great to see. So thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes. Oh, I did say that I was going to invite any general questions for the ALIOs. I don't know if there are any, but I'm not seeing any in the chat. Councillor Welch.
It's possibly relating to Live Active Leisure. It's great to see the new facilities, obviously, at Blair Gowrie, including 4G pitches, and the work that's been done in terms of overall sports and health provision there. The fastest expanding settlement out with Perth is Scone, and both myself and other councillors are actively trying to sort of see whether there are opportunities to expand the provision for sports pitches in the Scone area. And I just wonder if there is any work that you're doing in that context, or anybody we'd be more suitably to engage with within LAL to support that.
We're aware of discussions going on, but we're not actively involved in them at the moment. But we'd be happy to be consulted or brought into those conversations. So that would be directed to me in the first instance.
Thank you. I think both myself and Councillor Stewart will follow up on that basis. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. McWilliams, for the presentation. Thanks for the update on the and the work that's going on the library, sustaining the libraries, and thanks for the update on the Stone as well. So I'm going to thank all of the attendees from the ALIOs, Mr. Glasgow and Mr. Stewart from Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, Mr. Brown, Mr. Watson, Mr. Coleman, and Dr. Carey from Live Active Leisure, and Mr. McWilliams and Mr. Findlay from Culture, Perth and Ross. Thank you. We'll move straight on to the next item of business, which is the annual Perth and Ross Annual Council Annual Performance Report for 2024-25, and the Vice Convener is going to lead the discussion on this issue.
Thank you, Convener. So in turn, I'll hand over to Mr. Boland to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and good afternoon, councillors. I'm pleased to present the annual performance report for 24-25. The report before you today fulfils our statutory duty to produce and publish an annual performance report, and is therefore a key component of our strategic planning and performance framework, supporting the delivery of the Council's vision and achievement of our outcomes. The annual performance report provides an overview of our performance against our priorities, actions and key performance indicators as outlined in our corporate plan. The annual performance report is structured into several sections aligned to our corporate plan priorities and is supported by a range of appendices. The appendices to the main annual performance report are an executive summary, which provides an overview of key performance measures and changes in performance for each strategic priority, and an update on progress with agreed outcomes, agreed improvements as outlined in the Corporate Delivery Improvement Plan. Case studies are provided in a separate document and are summarised in the main annual performance report. Once approved, the case studies will be put on the Council's website, with hyperlinks provided in the annual performance report itself. There are also links within the annual performance report to financial information and an additional report on how we are performing against the best value themes which are set nationally. These will also be published on the Council's website. Throughout the report, there are numerous examples of how our services have positively impacted individuals, businesses and communities. However, we also recognise the challenges faced in 24-25 and what lie ahead. The report outlines these challenges and the work we are doing to address them. The Scrutiny and Performance Committee today are asked to scrutinise the annual performance report for 24-25, providing any feedback which you would want to be incorporated into the final report, which will go to Council on the 29th of October, and also identify any areas of performance for further scrutiny at future committees. So in conclusion, I look forward to your feedback on how we can continue to improve and achieve our strategic priorities. Officers from across the Council are within the chambers, as also online. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Do we have any questions? Please indicate in the chat. It's all quiet, so I'll cover one of my questions first. So on page 24, there is a KPI related to the percentage of premises that have gigabit broadband available to them. It's noted there that PKC will aim to influence that. My question was, what influence do we have given that the current programs are all government backed and run? Might it be more realistic to say that we're monitoring that, or are there things going on behind the scenes? So for example, do we partner specifically with providers and help them expedite their road closures or other roadworks arrangements? So the question is, to what extent do we influence the gigabit broadband rollout? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for your question, Billy. I think the mention of influence is maybe relating to the fact that we've been successful in attracting funding from UK government at one point, but also from the TCT's deal in terms of channeling some of that funding to support effectively the acceleration of the gigabyte infrastructure across Perth and Kinross. And in that case, we've done that with Angus, as well. So as an example, that funding was used to bring gigabyte capacity to public buildings across Perth and Kinross, including schools and other offices. So in that way, we obviously try to influence by providing that financial incentive. But you're right as well, we are also monitoring what the national government's program are effectively delivering in the area.
Thank you very much. And I see we have questions. Councillor Allen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I've got a number of questions. I'll just ask one or two and then come back, or I might just tear it back. Thank you. I'm going to ask a question. Yeah. On page 34 is my first question. And it basically, on the second half of the page, it says the following. It says £9.2 million in additional benefits secure for Perth and Kinross residents by our welfare rights service in 24-25. This marks a significant uplift driven by stronger service promotion and improved follow-up efforts to better track financial outcomes. I don't understand that. Can you help me understand that, please?
Do we have Lynn on the call at all?
I think Nicola Sullivan's online. Nicola?
Should we maybe circle back to that one, Councillor Allen? Do you have another question to hand?
Next one's on page 40. On the first point there, on percentage of people earning less than the living real wage, it suggests that the target met, not met. Target set, but data not yet available. Well, if the target's set, why is it not published?
Sorry, Councillor, just if I'm picking up correctly, the target for the current year is obviously the 15%. I think if the right one you're making reference to, but obviously we've not got the data for the current 24-25 currently.
Thank you. Will we have that data for when this comes to full council, Mr. Boland?
No, that won't be available until November, unfortunately.
Okay, do you have a further question at this point? You do, go ahead.
I had a few comments as well. There's good information on page 55 about the saving of the libraries. We've covered that already. I'm not going to go back to that. Page 47. Area grassland managed by PKC for biodiversity improvement objectives. I'm sorry, it's a mess, and we need to have a restructured view on this. I understand the budget issues that we've had, but you know what? We can more than treble and quadruple our management of grassland, but we're not managing it. We're letting it grow wild, and it's a mess, and I'm getting lots of complaints about it. Yep.
Okay, so we'll come back to the question about the benefits rights team. Meantime, Councillor Robertson, a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Convener. We seem to be in a situation in Scotland where we've got so many different crises. We've got housing crisis, we've got drug death crisis, we've got climate crisis, and we've got a cost of living crisis. I was going to ask, trying to deal with all these different crises, and also the climate crisis, I noticed that we're going to have to spend a lot of money going forward on trying to meet our climate targets. And I was asking if this is recognised as an issue within the council, because the more costs we put on people, we're already paying a lot more for our energy because of the surcharge on it, but the more costs we put on people by trying to meet our climate targets, surely it's not helping in the cost of living crisis. So I was looking at the report and seeing all the different issues with, like, it's costing £200,000 more to make our refuse vehicles green. All these different costs are surely putting pressure on our ability to meet our targets and address the cost of living crisis.
Lisa Simpson, thank you.
Councillor Robertson, I think that's a really valid point, and I think that's the challenges that are facing local government and central government across the country and across the globe. This is part of the issue. There are certain requirements statutorily that we should be working to and targets that we're trying to achieve. And obviously there's an obligation under public reporting to be commenting on that. But there is an issue about how do you prioritise the priorities, and I suppose that's part of the political challenge as well, in terms of determining where we put finite resources and where can they make the biggest impact and value. But that doesn't negate from the fact that there are several crises of various forms affecting society at the moment, and that's the challenge that we have going forward.
Could I also have a follow-up, Vice Convener? I thank Ms Simpson for a response, but can I ask that we as a local authority and through the Chief Executive, we actually look at the things we do and do a cost-benefit analysis when we come to decide to spend money on green issues? And I'm thinking in particular £200,000 to convert our vehicles, and that money is going to probably get more and more grow because of the shortage of vegetable oil fuels. So could I ask that in future, when we decide to do things to address the climate crisis, that we do a cost-benefit analysis to make sure that that doesn't impact on the cost of living crisis, which we are also trying to address?
Thank you. I think it's bordering a comment there, but I think Mr. Morone also wanted to give response to your first question, Councillor Robertson. So, Serge, please.
It's just to add to the discussion, you're right, some of priorities are sometimes working against each other, but they also could work together. So if you can think about insulation of housing, obviously this is measures to reduce carbon reduction, but it's also helping people with fuel poverty. So you could have measures which are effectively helping both priorities at the same time.
Okay, thank you. And I believe Mr. Leonard also wants to contribute on this.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I was really just pick up on Serge's point there with the regards to co-benefits. Other examples, as well as the fuel poverty, is things like some of the things that we're doing around affordable, accessible travel. There's also, in terms of the green space activities, there's proven links to health and well-being, and also some of the things that we're doing is stimulating new business opportunity and growth in these areas. So yes, there are some costs associated with this work, but also there are many benefits, some of which can actually improve people's cost of living situation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I see we have Nicola Sutherland on the line now. So I wonder, Councillor Allen, could you repeat your initial question for her benefit? Thank you. One about benefits, amounts of money.
Yeah, it's on page 34. On the right-hand side of the page, the first bullet point reads 9.2 million in additional benefits secured for Perth and Kinross residents by our Welfare Rights Service in 24-25. This marks a significant uplift driven by stronger service promotion and improved follow-up efforts to better track financial outcomes. If you could just try and explain that to me in English, thank you.
No problem. So we only report on the benefit gains that that we're confident that people have secured. So we might help people to make claims for say 600 benefits, but we may only know that 200 or 300 people have been successful in being paid those benefits. So what we've done is we've reprioritised the work so that we can capture more information. So we're better at getting back to people. We're better at keeping relationships going so that they can tell us how much they've been awarded, help them to challenge benefits later on. So it's a much more accurate reflection of the impact that we're having on households. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And then next question to Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. My question is following on from Councillor Allen here because of the problems with getting regarding the grass, the overgrown areas, etc. I can't quite understand this, which says we have more than doubled our management of grassland areas, including grow wild, increasing from 49, I presume, hectares to 121. That's obviously going to cost more money. Early monitoring has shown noticeable increases in insect and flower populations in unknown. Is somebody getting down there counting all the flowers and counting all the flies and whatever? I mean, for goodness sake, we haven't planted anything and it's weeds that are coming up. So I don't understand that one. Thank you.
I think just before I hand over to our officers to address some of that, it's worth pointing out that these were decisions of council and we're here today monitoring the implications of those decisions. So we should just be a little careful that we're asking questions in that regard. But I suppose, could the appropriate officer answer the point about how we monitor and ensure that we're getting the benefits we want in terms of biodiversity from that policy? I think Mr. Clegg is looking to answer. Please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, councillors. We are engaging volunteers to do a lot of the monitoring for us in different locations, and we're trialling all sorts of different techniques. We've done a big exercise on the North Inch, actually planting wildflowers and wildflower plugs, and we're monitoring those trials as well. So yes, there is active monitoring going on, but obviously we're not planting wildflowers everywhere, so they're not the areas that we're not planting won't be getting the same level of benefits, although there are biodiversity benefits overall from not cutting the grass. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. I think Kavina wishes for a question. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Vice Convener. It wasn't actually a question. It was just maybe some paint a further picture for Councillors Allen and Smith. the front page of the PA a few weeks ago had volunteers in the village that I live closest to, which is Kettins, who had taken matters into their own hands to clear back some of the grow wilded areas in the centre of the village. But following that, we actually, I got Community Green Space to come out and talk to the villagers, and what was initially a very frosty meeting, because the three valiant officers were having to defend the decisions of us as elected members, actually turned into a very productive discussion when we went out and went round the village and looked at all the green space and open areas, and decided on potential changes to where the Grow Wild would be. And it's also worth remembering that, as well as budget cutbacks in terms of grass cutting and so on, there was also supplementary money supplemented in the budget for planting shrubs, planting wildflowers, and support for the bloom groups across Perth and Kinross. So the Grow Wild, I get complaints as well about how unsightly it is, but there are alternatives, and the Community Green Space team, when they came out, were fantastic when talking to the villagers in Kettins.
Thank you. Next question to Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thank you. On page 80, we've got an improvement plan for wellbeing in Perth and Kinross, and mental health reduction and waiting times for people to access mental health services. It's suggesting that waiting times for mental health services have increased, but it doesn't say why. It suggests that we're working with partners to improve access and reduce delays through better coordination, but is there an explanation as to why they've increased?
Vice Convener, I understand Zoe Robertson's hopefully online. Should be able to respond.
Sorry, what did you say the name of the officer was? I didn't catch it.
Zoe Robertson. Chris is going to just come up to here. Thanks.
Thanks very much for the question. I'm unfortunately not able to answer the question directly, but I'm happy to take it back to officers and respond to you in writing if that's helpful. Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
And Greg, throughout the report, there's a number of targets set for March 25. When it's impossible for you to come here and tell us where we are, why can't we review those dates to something more sensible?
We will consider that, Councillor Allen, yes.
Okay, are there any further questions? If not, I have one, but please do put them into the chat if you have any further. On page 36, on the item related to reducing the poverty-related attainment gap, there's two targets there. It's very good news that we're meeting our own targets for minimising that educational achievement gap based on pupil background. But where do we go next? My question is, what's the process by which we challenge ourselves further? And this comes from a place of me looking there and seeing that it feels like particularly the SCQF level 5 indicator is going up and down, but while we're still achieving our target, and a 19% gap is still a big gap, it's still not good enough that kids from poorer backgrounds are only 19% less likely to get the same results as those from well-to-do backgrounds. So I suppose the question is, when will we review that target, and what's the process for doing that? Thank you.
Sorry, Bailey, could you just confirm what page that was on, sorry?
Page 36 under reducing the poverty-related attainment gap. Is David McCluskey on the call?
I know David was maybe having to leave. as the meeting went on, but I don't know if anybody from education is on the call.
I suppose though more generally, what is the process? Could you remind us for if committee wishes to set or vary the targets in these reports? Thank you. Oh, Fiona Mackay, please go ahead. Yep.
Apologies, we've only just joined the call because David had to leave. But in terms of looking at the stretch aims and targets that we have for education, we will do that on an annual basis as part of the review of the education plan, and targets certainly against stretch aims are shared at a national level. I have Eve Moran on the call as well, who is just recently joined us as a quality improvement manager alongside us, and Eve can be able to talk a little bit more about the setting of targets.
Hi folks, sorry, I just want to check with the questions. I only just joined. Was it around how we set the stretch aim targets?
Yeah, that's correct. So in summary, my observation was that for the two targets related to reducing the poverty-related attainment gap, I noticed that we're now meeting those and our performance is varying a little, but while still meeting our target. So my question is specifically, what's the process by which we maybe set a higher bar for ourselves in order that we're still pushing hard on that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Internally, we will look at that. Interestingly, because the stretch aims are something that's linked in with the Scottish Government and we liaise with the Scottish Government around the setting of those, the way that the stretch aims have worked is they've asked us to set them over a period of time. When we went back and asked for those that we had already met, should we reset them and sort of extend them, in terms of that formal piece, it came back as a no, because that then, I suppose, they're gathering information about from our original stretch what percentage of local authorities have met or exceeded that original bar. So we haven't actually changed formally those stretch aims, even where we've met them. However, in terms of our own processes, when we look at target setting, we look at that school by school. Quality improvement officers are out looking at stretch aims with head teachers and reviewing those. So where individually schools have met stretch aims, that can be looked at in terms of setting new targets. But in terms of that whole national piece and the actual reporting of those stretch aims, we haven't actually formally moved them on because the advice was not to. For data gathering, but we do internally look at that and look at that challenge and look at that school by school when people are out working with head teachers looking at target setting. But the stretch aims will be coming to an end soon, and that'll be the next cycle. We're waiting to hear from Scottish Government the expectation for those, still in consultation, and then we'll look at what we're going to do going ahead. There'll certainly be some, good discussion about that shortly.
Okay, thank you for the response. We have another question from Councillor Allen. Go ahead.
Thank you again. The scrutiny team have been quite involved in ASN recently, and just on pages 145 and 146, it talks about a spike of 29 children placed into independent schools, and it's a concerning spike in something that was previously a downward trajectory. And as much as we're looking at ASN, can you just talk to that for us, please, and help us understand why the trend is moving that way and if we think we can reverse it?
Thank you. Would that be Ms. Mackay again? Please go ahead.
Yes, it would. Yes, it has been disappointing to see that there's been an increase in the number of policing requests from parents looking for independent special school places, and it's an area that we're working on through developing the resource that we have for our intensive support provisions. Members will maybe be aware of the work that's been ongoing to open 3 new additional intensive support provisions this session. That's in Kinross High School, in Perth High School and in Viewlands Primary School, with a proposal currently being taken forward around the development of provision within the Community School of Auchterarder catchment and St John's catchment. Together, these developments will hopefully address some of the increase that we've seen and provide additional resource for Perth and Kinross parents.
One of my concerns is the amount of money that we have to pay to put these children into independent schools. Can we not accommodate them in alternative schools?
We have to have the placements to be able to do that, and with our places are currently full, and parents have been seeking alternative options elsewhere. Some of the placements we haven't had. We don't always. It's not us placing within these schools. Sometimes it's a result of parental placing requests where those placing requests have been upheld through the legal system when they've appealed against refusals for placements. So some of it's out with our control as such, but what we are seeking to do is to work more closely with parents to ensure that they are satisfied and feel that the best option for their children is a Perth and Kinross school. So that's a continuing piece of work that we are working closely with our schools to take forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Councillor Frampton for a question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm looking at page 73 of the thing, and the bullet point that's recruitment of host families for unaccompanied asylum seeking children, and the fact that it's slowed despite recruitment campaigns. And then it states that alternative accommodation options are being considered. How many host families do we actually need for these children? And what is the alternative accommodation options so that we know that these children can be placed somewhere safe?
Thank you for the question. Who would like to address that one?
Thank you, Councillor Frampton, for your question. I suppose the issue around how many families we need is going to be really variable. It depends on the number of young people who have been transferred through the National Transfer Scheme, and that can change at any point in time. But I can provide you with kind of details off table in terms of how many host families we have on our books at this point in time. In relation to alternative options that we're looking at, I mean, clearly we would want children and young people to experience a family-based environment to support and reorientate them within Perth and Kinross. So we are looking at whether we can make use of our kind of foster carers in a different way, but also looking at kind of supported accommodation options as well. So we do have a number of options available, but they are kind of implications with those that aren't host families, if that kind of makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Question to Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm on page 38, 39. It's disappointing to see that the referrals to the Child Protection Duty Team has increased by 9%. I'm very interested in the Child Protection Committees and the work that you're doing in Letham. Do you have any initial findings from this, or is it just too early at this stage?
Thank you for the question. The engagement that we had in Letham, the response that we received from both the Child and Adult Protection Committees was relatively low from families. But what we did do is we did take the opportunity to engage with our third sector partners in the area in terms of the support and outreach that they could provide their families. Just kind of in response to the number of referrals that the Child Protection Duty Team is receiving, it's always a bit of a kind of, I suppose, a bit of a nebulous kind of question in terms of, is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, it's a good thing in terms of that there's that there's better identification and more people are being referred to the service, and I suppose we would see that as a success, because it means that we're able to provide early intervention. And if we're working with our kind of colleagues both within education and learning, within health and within our third sector organisations, and they can direct children and young people to us at an earlier time, then that's something that we would prefer to support a prevention of escalation into more kind of statutory formal measures for them.
Okay, thank you. So we will move to comments then. Does anyone wish to make comment against this paper? There being no comments, then I'll thank officers for their responses. Thank you. I think we put you through your paces on that one. Thank you very much. So it's recommended that the committee scrutinises the report, identifies any areas for future scrutiny committees, agrees the proposals to amend the 2 key performance indicators, and agrees proposed reporting amendments, arrangements for the corporate delivery and improvement plan. I think the one piece of feedback I might be minded, if others agree, to provide to full council would be something around going further on those targets related to the poverty related attainment gap. In my view, it seems that we're already overperforming on those, so therefore the scope for us to push harder as Perth and Kinross rather than waiting for national indicators to change. Would the committee be agreeable with that, and does the committee have anything else that they'd like to feed back to full council? Getting nods of agreement. Are we agreeable? Is there anything else anyone would like to pass to full council on this? Okay, are we happy to agree the paper? Perfect, thank you very much. And back across to you, convener. Oh, there's a request for comment from Councillor Robertson. Please go ahead, Councillor Robertson.
Sorry, I couldn't get my seat to get in the box. Would it be possible, when I spoke earlier, I said I would quite like more cost benefit analysis done on the things that we embark on, to make sure that what we're doing is best value for money for both our taxpayer and for us as a council. Thank you.
Yep, and we'll maybe turn it over to officers to see after the meeting in what regards we can do that. But I think that's a valid point to take forward as well, Mr. Councillor Robertson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, over to you, convener.
Thank you, Vice Convener. So we move to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Data Protection Compliance Report for 24-25. And I think the report is going to be introduced by Gillian Walker, who's our Data Protection Officer. Gillian, over to you.
Thank you, convener. So this is the Data Protection Officer's report into the Council's compliance with data protection legislation during 2024-25. Includes details of the performance of the Council's information rights team in handling requests for personal information and data protection complaints received by the Council. So I would ask the committee to note in particular the huge increase in the volume of personal information requests received by the Council, which is enumerated in section 5 of the report, and also to note the extremely high compliance rate which has been maintained by the information rights team despite this increase. As members of the committee will note, there was a slight reduction in the number of data breaches recorded during 24-25 when compared to the previous year. Reported data breaches are now fed back monthly to strategic leads via the Council's policy and governance group to improve accountability and awareness within the services. And that's already bearing fruit in terms of training being passed on to staff. Hopefully the contents of the report are quite clear and straightforward. I'm obviously happy to answer any questions today, and if I can't answer them, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Illing.
Thank you. Your report gives a pretty clear indication of the number of breaches we know about. What do you know about the breaches we don't know about? And how do you reduce them?
So known unknowns, yeah, it's unknown unknowns. I think you're quite right. We can't know about everything that goes wrong. I think what we can do, and what my team try very hard to do, is inculcate an atmosphere throughout the council where people are aware of the importance of treating personal information in accordance with the legislation. When people do ask us questions or let us know about something that has gone wrong, rather than finger wagging, we try to provide a supportive environment, training tailored to that team when that's appropriate. We can sometimes suggest changes into how teams operate. Quite recently, without going into too much detail, there was a particular breach where something had gone wrong with a physical piece of paper, and we were able to actually move them to recording this information online instead, so that there couldn't be a repetition of this breach. So I think it's really through these means that will hopefully reduce the number of known unknowns or unknown unknowns. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not seeing any further requests for a question. Okay, so are there any comments at all? Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to commend the Data Protection Officer and our team for the thorough and transparent assessment of the Council's compliance with data protection legislation over the past year. The report reflects a strong commitment to upholding the principles of the UK GDPR, even in the face of increasing demand and limited resources. The reduction in data breaches by 18% compared to the previous year is in particular encouraging development. It demonstrates that the Council is actively learning from incidents and implementing effective measures to prevent reoccurrence. The introduction of the monthly reporting strategy leads as a welcome step that will help embed a culture of accountability and continuous improvement. The handling of the subject access requests is another area where the Council has shown resilience and dedication. Despite a 17% increase in SARS and a significant rise in the complexity and volume of records processed, particularly in relation to Scotland's redress scheme, the team maintained a high compliance rate of 95% with statutory timescales. This is a notable achievement and reflects the professionalism and compassion of the information rights team. The proactive work around AI governance, training and policy development also deserves recognition as the Council's use of AI expands. The DPO's involvement in ensuring ethical and legal compliance is vital and well managed. The planned improvements for 25-26 include the migration of processes to an online portal and the recruitment of additional administrative support are positive steps that will help sustain and enhance the Council's compliance efforts. The report reflects a robust and evolving data protection framework and underpinned by a dedicated team and a culture of continuous improvement. The Council is well positioned to meet future challenges and uphold the rights of individuals with integrity and care. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Okay, committee, can we note the Data Protection Officer's assessment of the Council's compliance with the requirements of data protection legislation, and note that the officer is confident that an acceptable degree of compliance with data protection law was achieved during 24-25, and that will continue this year. Thank you. Don't go away. The next report is the Freedom of Information Performance Report for 24-25, and that's also going to be introduced by Gillian Walker. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So this is the report into the Council's performance in relation to freedom of information legislation during 24-25. So I would ask councillors to note that we complied with 92% of requests received within statutory timescales, which is slightly below the target of 95%. This reduction has now been reversed for the last quarter, but can be accounted for by delays in responses being passed to the Central Information Rights Team by services, and also, as outlined in the report, an increase in the complexity and size of requests. I'm happy to confirm that there's been an increase this year in the percentage of requests receiving at least part of the information they've requested. And I would also like councillors to note that where requesters receive a partial response, this is often because something as minor as a name or a phone number have been removed from the response in line with our statutory requirements. It doesn't indicate necessarily that we don't hold the information requested, just that we have to remove, for example, personal information. The number of requests for internal reviews of responses has increased, but still remains as a low percentage of the total number of requests received. And once again, I'm happy to answer any questions you have now, and I can get back to you in writing with anything that I'm unable to answer today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, you've got a question.
Thank you, convener. Yeah. On page 180, background and context at point 3.5, it says alterations to the council's organisational structure have meant that there are ongoing changes to internal processes for handling freedom of information requests. Can you maybe just elaborate on that for me, please?
Yeah, certainly. I think what I was trying to illustrate there was that where there perhaps have been changes in how teams are organised, for example, finance or teams within what was previously Environment Service, we had reporting structures for asking for information and getting it back relatively quickly. Changes have obviously been changes in the structure of the council have obviously meant changes to these lines of passing information back. I'm not sure I'm doing a very good job of making it clearer, possibly making it more confusing. But basically, changes in staffing structures have meant that it's not always as straightforward as it has been previously to get the information we need. However, that's now settling down, which is why I think for the last quarter, our performance in terms of compliance with the 95% target has actually improved again. Does that answer your question?
It goes some way towards it, yeah. At 2.3, you mentioned the fact that there's a reduction in compliance with timescales, and then in the last quarter it has gone back up. So I got that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, do you want to come in with your comment now, Councillor Massey? And Vice Convener.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you for the report, and I think things are looking very much in order in this respect in terms of the overall trends. My question was about 4.9 and specifically the 323 requests that received no information back, and just wanted to clarify that by way of giving some examples. So would I be correct in understanding that, for example, if someone asks us about something that is completely irrelevant to our work, that ends up in that bucket there? So for example, if someone asks about the cost of operating guided busways in the Perth and Kinross Council area, that goes into that 323 because we don't have any guided busways. And then as a small follow-up to that, what do you do in the case where maybe there's a blanket FOI request, maybe from national media, that might ask about SEND provision, special educational needs provision, which is the English terminology? What do you go back? Do you go back and help those people with understanding ASN is the terminology in Scotland and then still being helpful? A bit of, if you could paint a picture on that, please. Thank you.
Certainly, you're absolutely right. In terms of information not held, very often it's because it's something that just doesn't apply at all. We actually did have a request relatively recently about fines for using bus gates in Perth and Kinross. We don't have any bus gates. The answer to that is inevitably going to be information not held. Similarly, we get a large number of requests, round robin requests from the media, which the example you gave of SEND provision is a good one. We don't just simply go back and say, this doesn't apply, nothing held. You know, on you go. We've got a duty to advise and assist, which we take extremely seriously. What we would do in that case is actually go and get the information from the service as it relates to ESN provision, go back to the requester and say, this information, you know, that you've requested is not held. However, we can advise you of the following and provide them with the relevant statistics for the legislation which is in force. I cannot think of an occasion where I would have expected us to hold information, and in fact we don't. I don't think that's a systemic problem at the council at all. Whenever we don't hold information, it's because it's something that doesn't apply in this area. It's perhaps somebody's confused about which public authority may hold the information, and we can direct them to the Scottish Ambulance Service, Dundee City Council, Police Scotland. But we take our duty, as I say, to advise and assist extremely seriously. And even although it looks like we're saying information not held, we are in fact putting a great deal of effort into our responses to these requests also. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, another question.
Thank you, Convener. I've got two questions. They're quick, so I'll just ask them together, if that's okay. First of all, on page 181 at 4.4, it's suggesting the factors contributing to 5% reduction in performance have been identified as. I'm interested to know a wee bit more about an increase in the number of complex requests. If that's a reason for the decline, can you maybe just explain a complex request as regards to just a normal one?
Certainly. One of the things that our relatively new case management system allows us to do is actually break down requests into individual tasks. So you may get an FOI request, which is for a single document. Increasingly, however, we're getting FOI requests that may have 20 points, requiring input from 20 different areas of the council, 20 different officers. So we would class them as being a complex request, something that doesn't just go to one area of the council, something that requires multiple areas of work within it. And our case management system actually allows us to identify, rather than just the blunt number of requests received, actually to break these requests down into individual tasks, service tasks, and we can quantify the complexity of the request that way. Thank you.
Very quickly, my last point was in your conclusions at 5.2, it says, well, there was a reduction in compliance with statutory timescales in 24-25. Arrangements have been put in place to ensure that performance improves in 25-26. Well, I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Well, so am I. I think what we have done within the internal structure of the team is we've identified a sort of a two-tier process for chasing officers up, for escalating issues in obtaining information at a much earlier stage than we did previously. And as I say, that the statistics for the last quarter do demonstrate that this is bearing fruit, and you're welcome to challenge me on this time next year if that's not sustained throughout the year, but early signs are good. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Allen's last but one question prompted me to think of something, which was my understanding is that there's provision for not responding to a freedom of information requests if it would take up an excessive amount of time or cost too much. I wonder whether the management software that you were talking about actually tracks the amount of officer time that's involved in any of the requests, and did we refuse any requests because of the amount of time or the cost involved?
Thank you, Convener. We did refuse some requests because of the amount of time they would take. I don't have the exact figure to hand. I'm happy to get that to you in writing after the meeting. We do rely on services to tell us how much time they have taken to locate the information and provide it to us. So whilst the software we use does record what services tell us, and it records how long officers in my team have taken, unfortunately, quite often don't know how long it's going to take too long until it's taken too long. It's the unfortunate truth, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Councillor Massey, you've got a comment.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you again to Gillian and the team for the detailed and transparent report outlining the Council's performance under the Freedom of Information Scotland Act 2002 and the Environmental Information Scotland Regulations 2004. The reduction in the total number of Freedom of Information requests by 4% is offset by the notable increase in the complexity of those received. The introduction of the new Freedom of Information case management system has provided valuable insight into the shift, with a 7% rise in service tasks indicating more multifaceted queries requiring cross-departmental collaboration. This is a positive step in evidencing the growing demand placed on the information rights team. Although compliance with statutory timescales dipped to 92% in 24-25, the swift and proactive measures taken, such as early management intervention and improved data gathering, have already yielded results. The first quarter of 25-26 shows a return of 97% compliance, even with a 39% increase in requests. This turnaround is commendable and reflects the team's agility and commitment to continuous improvement. The press have highlighted concerns about only a third of Freedom of Information requests being fully covered. It's important to contextualise this within the broader operational landscape. The report clearly demonstrates that the Council continue to uphold a robust and responsive FOI process, even as the complexity and volume of requests evolve. Regarding the courier's coverage, it is worth noting that 495 requests fully responded to, 680 received partial responses, often due only part of the request information being held. In 323 cases, no information was provided, typically because the Council did not hold data or it was already publicly available. In relation to Freedom of Information, which covers non-personal information, I know that 100% of the requesters received a response, and even in cases where no information was held or only some of the information was held, officers provided as much detail as possible, often directing requesters to other organisations or explaining why data isn't held. This breakdown shows that the Council is making every effort to respond meaningfully to requests, even when full disclosure isn't possible. The low number of reviews, 2.5% requests, and minimal appeals to the Scottish Information Commissioner further reinforces the effectiveness and fairness of the FOI process. The Council's FOI performance remains strong and responsive, with clear evidence of improvement and adaptability. The Information Rights team deserve recognition for their professionalism and resilience in managing increasingly complex demands while maintaining high standards of transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Massey. Can the committee then note that there was a 4% reduction in the overall number of FOI requests received during 24-25, but an increase in terms of length and or complexity of requests, which impact on that? On it, I'll tell you what. Can we just agree the recommendations in the report? Sorry. Thanks very much, Gillian, for attending, for compiling the report, and for the work that's gone in from you and your team over the year. Okay, we move to the final item on the agenda, which is the Health and Social Care Partnerships Clinical and Care Governance Assurance Report. The Vice Convener is going to lead discussion on this item.
Thank you. We'll give convener a wee break, and in turn, I'll hand over to Mr. Singh to please introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. The report before committee today provides assurance around professional and care governance of social work and social care services that have been delegated by the Council to the Health and Social Care Partnership. The report provides both national and local context to care governance arrangements and notes a transitioning to adopting the NHS Tayside Clinical Care Governance Framework, which will provide greater triangulation of sources of information around assurance. The report notes risks that were escalated to the Care and Professional Governance Forum and how fuller engagement with the services has resulted in these risks being removed, and recognise as service improvement areas due to there being no risks in relation to continuity of service or safety. Section 3.6 of the report notes 4 annual assurance reports that came to the forum, and all were provided with a level of assurance. The forum also regularly reviews compliance against timescales for complaints for which no issues were escalated. There's also mention in the report around the Adult Protection Committee submitting its national data set for the first time, with a caveat in relation to some performance reporting due to a new IT system, which we will continue to monitor. And there's also reference to the substance misuse MAT standards, which on the whole we are compliant with, and a local solution being worked on in relation to the 1 amber rating. So as Chief Social Work Officer to the Council, I would recommend to committee today a level of reasonable assurance based on scrutiny undertaken by the Care and Professional Governance Forum.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any questions? Any comments from members of the committee? Okay. There being none, then I'll thank Mr. Singh for sitting for a great many hours for that moment of stardom. And we will, does the committee agree that they find the level of reasonable assurance to be appropriate? Agreed. Thank you. And then I don't have powers to close the meeting, but I know someone who does, so over to you, convener.
Okay. Thanks very much, Vice Convener. Thanks to all the many officers and people from the outside bodies who've attended today, and thanks to members of the committee for their engagement with the business. The meeting's closed.